Notice that oh, you on there? So, call to order. You'll notice on the agenda that we did park the presentation for T3 Transit. That will take place Monday, the 29th at noon hour. And there's another item that was parked, I think it was in relation to the Hamburg resolution on the corner of Great George and Kent Street, so we'll deal with that hopefully on Monday also. Okay. We acknowledge and appreciate the land in which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq First Nation. I just called to order there. Declarations of conflict of interest.
I have one, Mayor Brown.
And Councillor Durant, is that for C?
2.
Okay, construction waste disposal. Okay, so you.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's also the under E for planning heritage resolutions and 2 bylaw readings. Is it under what? Yeah, so Much Crescent, I think, is with Warren Durant's.
Yeah.
So you have to also call conflict of interest in that too.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Any more? Good. Bless you there, CAO Eleanor. Okay, approval of agenda. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, second by Councillor Ramsey. All those in favor? Okay. Councillor Durant, no problem?
In favor, yep.
Okay. So 4A, and we have our presenters from Island Waste Management Corporation. CAO, did you want to add something to it, or is there anything that has to be added? No? Okay. Karen, could you introduce your team, and then we'll start the presentation, and it'll be on, it's live stream, so the big screens will project it out onto the World Wide Web.
Excellent, thank you.
Green light.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm the CEO of Island Waste Management Corporation, and beside me to my right is Tracy Campbell. She's the Customer Service Manager. And to my left, Molly Pendergast, who's our Communications and Engagement Manager. Would you like me to proceed?
Yes, and if either one of you want to participate, you just have to use the mic because that mic projects it out onto our live stream. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So again, thank you for the invitation to be here. We always welcome the opportunity to talk about Island Waste Management Corporation and the work that we do there, the how and the why. So I'll start by just sharing with you our mandate, which is to deliver a cost-effective and environmentally responsible waste management system for the residential and commercial sectors, and that was established in 1999 when IWMC was established through Order in Council. And our vision is to be the Canadian leader in public sector solid waste management, which I know seems very aspirational, but we really have in Prince Edward Island, we've been leaders in waste management across the country, and we want to continue not just to hold that position, but to improve that position. This is a picture of a community dump prior to the creation of Island Waste Management Corporation, and what you'll note from this picture is really it's just a hole in the ground, and so the waste that would have been dumped there was allowed to have rainwater run through it, and household hazardous waste could have been dumped there, really anything. And it was one of the things that motivated the island community to look at a better solution. So in the 70s, we had more than 400 of those dumps across Prince Edward Island. I remember growing up and my grandparents, where their house was, right across the road, there was a community dump. There was people going in and out of there all the time, dumping refrigerators and construction and demolition waste and you name it, and it was dumped there. So the committee was established back in the early 90s to rethink how we were doing waste management in Prince Edward Island. And they developed like a really unique local initiative that was focused I think the primary focus was on reducing demand on the landfill and making sure that we had a landfill that would properly manage the disposal of waste. But we didn't want everything to go to the landfill. We knew that there would be opportunities for composting organics, marketing some of the recyclables that were going into the landfill, and thinking about how we managed things like household hazardous waste, so like paint, for example. So in 1994, the East Prince Waste Management Facility in Wellington Centre was constructed, and it's our only municipal solid waste landfill in Prince Edward Island. So that led, actually, first we rolled out the program in Prince County following the opening of the landfill, and then expanded island-wide in 2002. And at that time, all of those community dumps were closed. So even that, to my mind, and looking at the history, is a pretty positive outcome for IWMC. So the Waste Watch program, why is it important? Well, we have a very small land base, as we all know, and there's not very much space in Prince Edward Island to safely dispose of and bury waste materials. In fact, it was quite an undertaking to identify the location and construct the existing landfill that we have now. And it is time limited. It does have an end of life, so we're always mindful of that. In Prince Edward Island, we're one of very few places that has full reliance on our groundwater for drinking, and all kinds of other aspects of our lives, feeding animals or watering animals, and proper waste disposal is really important to protect our water supply. We know that mandatory sorting at source, so that idea that every islander and business and visitor to Prince Edward Island is required to sort their waste into 3 categories, into organics and waste and recyclables. It diverts literally thousands of tons every year from the landfill. It means that we're not creating as much methane gas because we don't have organics going in there, and it also ensures that hazardous items don't end up in our landfill. And the other thing that happens is it allows for many of those materials to be repurposed. So we'll use the Central Compost Facility in Brookfield as an example, where our organics are processed. The organics that go in there are processed into grade A compost material that's used by farmers in Prince Edward Island, and it meets the grade A standard, and it seems like a much better thing than having that material end up in a landfill. We're actually giving it a new life. So I mentioned that the requirements, and I know that everybody in the room here knows this, that the compost essentially is our food scraps, our non-recyclable paper products, so things like box board, like your cereal box, for example, go in the compost carts. We have 2 different types of recyclable materials, so we're using blue bags for things like paper products, and the other is for like metal and glass items, and then waste. So those are the materials that can't be recycled, they can't be composted, and if they don't require special disposal, then they go into the waste stream. So I will mention that since the launch of the program back in, island-wide in 2002, there have been some significant, I would call them improvements in the program over that period of time, in that we now have a number of stewardship and special disposal programs. The things that historically would have gone also into the landfill, I've already talked about household hazardous waste, but other things like televisions or batteries, light bulbs, a lot of these things that can be repurposed for another use, and also things like mattresses and box springs. You can imagine how much space mattresses would take up in a landfill, a lot, and they don't compress really easily, because especially the box springs. So those programs have really helped contribute to that diversion from the landfill. So the Waste Watch program offers a number of things to residents. So biweekly collection of our recyclables on a monthly basis. We have cottage services The regular cottage service is from June till September, but we do have an extended program as well. We do seasonal cleanups, and we do Christmas tree collection in January. The other thing that those Waste Watch fees, which currently are approved at $236 for a year-round resident and PEI, but being subsidized currently to $213. But those fees also fund our operations. So they fund the operation of the central compost facility, for example, or the East Prince Waste Management Facility, the landfill. In terms of the commercial side, so while commercial, industrial, and institutional organizations are required to source, it is their responsibility to ensure that happens. We at Island Waste Management Corporation don't actually do curbside collection for commercial customers. It's not part of our mandate. About 82% of our funding comes from residential customers, and that's where our focus is. The other 22% or thereabouts comes from tippage fees that commercial customers pay when they dispose of waste or other materials. So when Island Waste Management was launched back in 2002, and with the closure of the 100 community dumps, it was really important that islanders, no matter where they live, didn't have to go far to access those disposal services. So you'll see from the map that we have Waste Watch drop-off centers across the island, sort of strategically placed to make sure that you don't have to go too far if you're a residential customer to dispose of waste. So our facilities, which I've quickly referenced, the Central Compost Facility is the facility that processes our organics. It processes about 30,000 tons a year, and it's where we take those organics and we turn them into compost. The East Prince Waste Management Facility, it's our, as I've said, our only landfill. It's fully lined, and we actually have a leachate treatment, water treatment system on site. So leachate essentially is the water that's running, like rain, that's running through the waste and then drains off there. It needs to be treated before it can be released out into a constructed woodland. And there we receive about 40 to 50,000 tons a year. I will say that one of the important things about the different facilities that we have is they all are designed for a very specific purpose. So the materials that go into those facilities need to be the materials that they're designed to process. We also work with PEI Energy Systems. It's privately owned, and we actually pay for waste to be processed there. So PEI Energy Systems can process 26,000 tons of waste on an annual basis, but on PEI, we generate more waste than that. So last year, for example, I think we diverted about 6,500 tons from PEI Energy Systems to the landfill. So anything that can't be incinerated ends up in the landfill. And you would know, I'm sure, that this facility provides heating and cooling to the QEH, to UPEI, and a number of other businesses and private and public businesses in the Charlottetown area. Pardon me? Yeah. Oh, City Hall as well. Oh, great. GFL Environmental is, sorry? I think it's working great. I like the cooling. So GFL Environmental, a privately owned company, and they operate our recycling facility, and they process about 10 to 14,000 tons of recyclables every year. And those recyclables, they basically bale them up and they sell them in the commodities market. So the collection path, pretty straightforward. I've already kind of alluded to this. For organics, they go to the central compost facility. For waste, so things that can't be repurposed in any other way, it either goes to PEI Energy Systems or it goes to East Prince Waste Management Facility. Now, in the Charlottetown area, burnable waste would normally go to PEI Energy Systems, and I'm going to talk, though, about why that's important in a couple of minutes. And the blue bags, number 1 and 2, go to GFL Environmental for processing. So I think this is important to talk about why contamination matters. I know I've certainly heard the comment from many, many people, well, what's the problem? Why can't we just throw it in the black bin? It's all going to be burned anyways. And that's not entirely, it's not entirely accurate. It may be the case that it will go to be burned, but let me talk about why it's important. So if we have contamination in loads that are delivered to the central compost facility, what we may find is we may find metal, glass, or plastic, and it damages our equipment there, really expensive equipment. And so we don't want to be in a situation where we have damaged equipment. Contaminated loads, so if a truck comes and it has contamination on it, it has to basically be separated on the floor once, like if it's tipped and we're like, oh, it's contaminated, has to be separated on the floor so the waste materials are taken out, has to be reloaded, then it has to be trucked somewhere for final disposal, which is an extra processing cost that we prefer not to incur. And if we have materials that shouldn't be in the organic stream come into the facility and they're not filtered out through a number of filtering processes, what will happen is we have to reprocess it. So we'll have to go through the whole system a second time and sometimes a third time in order to ensure that we're going to meet those grade A compost standards. So that's organics. In terms of waste, so I talked about the landfill. So the landfill is designed for waste materials. And we know that organic material in a landfill, in any landfill, will generate methane, which is a greenhouse gas, which we're all trying to curb. It also increases the volume and strength of leachate. And our leachate treatment system is not designed to handle organic material. And so when I talked about the idea that everything can just go to the burn plant and be incinerated, what happens is every organic or recyclable that ends up at PEI Energy System that's not supposed to be there means that either that or an equal amount, like an equal tonnage of that material will eventually go to the landfill because we're going to reach the cap. Every year we reach the cap. Sometimes we reach the cap on a single day, so we burn about 70 tons a day, and some days we have more material than that so we have to divert to the landfill. And so we don't want things like organics that could be processed and composted or recyclables, things that could be sold at market. We don't want those things to end up in the landfill. It's good to see them have new life, and also we don't want to shorten the lifespan of the landfill because, we don't want to have to be looking for another place for a new landfill in Prince Edward Island. I certainly don't want to be having to do that. And recycling. So the recycling is interesting. When I first came to Island Waste Management Corporation, I went for a tour at the recycling facility, and I was like, wow, there's a processing line there, and it has humans on it, about 30, I think, people, and they are, on that processing line, they're removing that contamination by hand. So if it wasn't there in the first place, they'd still have a job to do, but they wouldn't be dealing with materials that should have already been sorted before they came into the facility. Yeah, and it is dangerous. I mean, we don't, they essentially rip the bags off, open, it goes up a conveyor belt across the processing line. It's super interesting, across the processing line, and they're pulling stuff out. And so we never really know what they're going to find on that line. And the other thing is, it must be, in order to bale it and sell it as a commodity, it has to be free of waste. There can't be waste included. So education and customer service. So just to let folks know that we do have, we have an active communications and engagement department. We also have an active customer service department. And communicating with the public, it really is critical for success of the organization, and it's a challenge. Every day we're talking to customers. lots of days we're doing presentations to communities or schools or apartment buildings to help provide information about how to sort and what, to provide materials that might help with that. We've increased the variety of languages that we have our tools available in, including we use an app called Recycle Coach, which is a great app, and it'll tell you, if you sign up for it, it'll tell you what day you're getting collected and what's going to be collected, and it'll tell you if there's cancellations, like for a storm. You can actually look up to see whether something goes in the organics bin or in the waste bin. So this year, actually, we've had French and English, but we've added Mandarin this year. And in our other materials, printed materials, I think we have Arabic, Mandarin, Spanish, English, French. So it is, as the population of Prince Edward Island grows and changes, we're working to meet the challenge of making sure people have the information that they need to sort properly. So we did, over the last roughly 2 years, we were sort of interrupted a little bit by Fiona. We did an extensive strategic planning initiative, which included a survey. We did a virtual and in-person open house. We did focus groups. Representatives from the city of Charlottetown actually participated in one of our focus groups. And we heard pretty positive things. People are pretty proud of the Waste Watch program across Prince Edward Island, and the feedback we got was overwhelmingly positive. And do I think that there's always room for improvement? Absolutely. I think there is always room for improvement, and we're always, I think, striving towards that. So in terms of maybe Charlottetown-specific information, so the week of June 24th, we did a collection snapshot. Now, I would like to be able to come and bring you lots of trend data, but our systems don't, our current systems anyways, don't allow for report creating. So anytime we need to pull information, it's a manual process. So we did do a manual extraction of data the week of the 24th of June. And what we found that week there were about 19,600 collections in the city, and there were 220 carts rejected, which is about 1.12%, which tells me that people in Charlottetown are doing a fine job, really, in the main, in sorting. And some people are doing a really good job. And that's true everywhere in the province, that we have people who are doing a good job, and we have some people who are doing a great job. So I just wanted to share with you that that's what we saw when we had a look at those numbers. Now, this is not directly related to the conversation probably that we're going to have here in a minute, but since I had an audience, I thought I would mention it. I've read in the news that Charlottetown is looking at increasing the density of housing in the city in order to meet the challenges of the housing challenges. And so one of the things that we've done some reading about and seen in some other places in the country is a requirement when building permits are being issued that a waste overlay plan be considered as part of development of new properties. So it would actually take into consideration, like, where are you going to put the carts? How will the truck be able to back in, or enter the property somehow to get the trucks in, or to get the carts in a safe way? So it takes all those things into consideration. And I would be happy to, I have a link, I know Richmond, BC, there's a number of places that are doing this, quite a few, and it's a growing trend where this is a requirement to get a building permit. So I'll be happy to send this along if you're interested in having a look at that information. So some of the things recently that we've been doing with the City of Charlottetown, so we started around this time last year, probably doing some work with the city to talk about some of the waste management issues that arise in multi-unit dwellings. And that's actually where the waste overlay plan kind of conversation came up for me. We recently had a bit of a collaboration between our program compliance inspector and your bylaw officer, who did some community outreach on last Tuesday, whatever the date was last Tuesday. And they're planning to do another outreach on the 30th of July. When I saw the results of that, I felt some concern and felt that we needed to do something else. So we're going to talk about what the something else will be. We also, as I mentioned, have done we do a variety of community presentations, and we do have one planned for a Sherwood neighborhood at the end of August, which, and we know, and I know Tracy Campbell can probably talk at length. I know that sometimes people discount the value of education or public sorting presentations, but we know that it really, really can have an impact. We see behavior change when we have residences where people are having difficulty sorting, and we attend and give a presentation. We can actually see the change in behavior, and we can see the change in results at the curb. So it's great to be able to do that. So in relation to the 3 streets that have been identified as a particular concern in the Charlottetown area recently, Bayfield, Douglas, and Passmore, we are going to provide a sorting presentation for residents of those streets this Thursday, July 25th, from 6:30 to 7:30 at the Jack Blanchard Hall. We're going to be out delivering invitations tomorrow to the folks who live on those 3 streets. We're also going to provide a one-time cleanup to these same residents for their green carts, their black carts, and their recyclables Friday morning at 7 a.m., and it will be at 7 a.m. on Friday. And so that's part of the information we'll be communicating in our invitation to the sorting presentation and at the sorting presentation. We've asked GFL to help us with this, and they said we can do it right at 7 a.m. on Friday morning, so that's when it's going to happen. So if folks want to be on those streets, want to benefit from that one-time cleanup, then that's their opportunity. The thing that I would say about these 2 activities is I think it allows residents to be very well positioned to be successful in the program, because we're going to provide information about how to sort, and we're going to clean them up so they'll start with a fresh slate. We're also going to continue and probably do more in terms of our promotional efforts around the sorting guidelines and the resources, some of the resources that I've already talked about. And this is just information. It's in the PowerPoint so that you have it. We'll also be sharing it with, as part of the invitation to residents to participate in the sorting presentation. We just thought it would be helpful for each of you to have that information at your fingertips. And Tracy, is there anything that you would like to add?
Karen?
Yes.
Just before we go on to Tracy or Ms. Pendergast, are there any questions just to Karen, or do you want to do the whole presentation and then open it up? What's your wish?
I just had one clarification
Can
I'm comfortable either way.
Are you okay?
Yes, of course.
Is that all right, Tracy? And yeah.
I'm just wondering, when you talked about the contaminated loads, and that was for the organics, assuming the contaminated, you're talking about whether there's glass or plastics or metal in the green bin?
Well, it could be anything that's not supposed to be in the green bin. So it could be glass, plastics, metal. It could be, what else could it be? I mean, that's probably actually the main things that it would be. Clothing, could be textiles as well.
Okay.
So there's certainly a list.
And that's what you were saying, where you have to dump it out on the floor, go through it all again, and reload it? Mm-hmm. Okay. And you don't run into that a lot with the black bin, I assume. It's mostly the green bin because of the organics?
Well, it's both. I mean, the waste carts are the waste carts are often contaminated with food waste. So the black cart has food waste in it. Okay. And the black cart also has recyclable materials or plastics in it, like recyclable plastics or refundables that shouldn't be in there.
Okay, so if they are in there, they end up going to the landfill site?
They may go to the incinerator, or they may go to the landfill. But if they go to the incinerator, that volume, that tonnage of that material that's not supposed to be in the waste stream will eventually find its way to the landfill, because we'll reach the cap.
Right. And the cap is 70,000?
It's about 70,000 a day. It depends on how much they have on the tip floor, but it's 26,000 tons a year. And that does include commercial as well. Like, the plant can only incinerate 26,000 tons per year.
And that's before, I understand they're doing a
Expansion.
renovation to an expansion. Yeah.
They are in discussions about an expansion. As far as I know, there's not a concrete plan in place, but if they proceeded with an expansion, that would change. That certainly would change things. Yep.
Councilor
Thank
Patar?
you. Thank you for coming in and doing this.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to suggest that, like, if the presentation is not concluded, to wait till we do further questions, as it might answer some.
That's why I asked Karen if she wanted to take some questions. She
I have
said,
questions, but it might get answered through
Yeah,
the
yeah.
process. So, you still have a presentation?
okay, you're all right, Councilor Beck, you were? Okay. Okay. So Karen, just proceed, so if we do have any questions, they may be answered in the further part.
I just wondered if Tracy had anything else she'd like to add that I might have missed.
I'd just like to speak a bit more. Sorry, I'll scoot over. I'd just like to speak a little bit towards the presentations, as I do a lot of those in a run of a year. And I do deal with multi-unit property managers quite often. I do find that, in my opinion and in my experience, presentations are a huge tool that helps. It may not solve all the problems, but it certainly helps a lot. Now, whether it's, at a multi-unit or like we're going to do at a community area, I think that's one of our main focuses that we need to, have more people participate in order to get everyone back on track.
Thank you, Tracy. Molly, is there anything you wanted to add?
Not at this time, I don't think so.
Nope. Okay, I think that's our presentation then.
Okay, Councilor Matar, do you think you have a question that they didn't answer yet? Okay, and Councilor Beck too, if you want to pop in there. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I guess, when I think about some of the challenges that were faced in the city in some areas, and I appreciate that education and presentations can help in addressing and having people understand it, but in some of our apartment complexes, it's the sheer volume of garbage that's being implemented into the bins that it's just not able to sustain that. I mean, there's apartments that have, there could be 5, 6 people living in one particular apartment, times that by, 10, 15 apartments in there. The volume is exceeding what the capacity of the garbage cans can handle, and therefore spilling out into the parking lot and surrounding area. And then that's becoming problematic for unsightly property, and then we're engaging in our bylaw and taking a lot of resources from the city, and in some cases, they're going in and cleaning up. And I wonder, and residents, would ask me personally, like, where's Island Waste Management in this? Why aren't they here cleaning this up? Why, so it seems like it's falling onto the city to deal with the issue at hand, and this repeat situation that just keeps occurring over and over. So I'm not sure, I was hoping that we'd have some solutions around how we're addressing that going forward with environmental health, yourselves, and the city. I think it was the 3 collaborators that were coming together to look to see if we could find some solutions and what that might be. And I don't know if that's coming down with a heavy hand on somebody about the waste management, but it is quite a problem for sure. And I know you're trying to address it, but volume is key. Thank you.
So if I may?
Go right ahead, I think he's looking for an answer.
Okay, perfect. So a couple of things. I'll just tell you that when I went to Island Waste Management Corporation, the former CEO told me that though I have a family of 4, if my waste cart was more than half full on collection day, I wasn't doing something wrong. That's what he told me. And I had never really thought about that, but when I started monitoring at home, I did discover that, in fact, that probably was true. It was about half full, sometimes less than that, and we're a family of 4. Because what he said was, if there's that much stuff in your waste cart, it probably means the things that are supposed to be in other streams, like organics, like in the green cart, or being recycled, are finding their way into the waste cart. So I'd say that firstly. Secondly, we did do some work with the City of Charlottetown Environmental Health, and we did come up with a new procedure. We drafted a letter together to say what we could each do. So we have no, like, we can't fine people. We don't have any authority to do that, but we can provide support and education. The city has some things that they can do within their authority, and environmental health has some things that they can do within their authority. So we finalized that letter last September, but I don't work for the city. I'm not sure where that is, or whether that's been discussed, or whether there's support for taking that step. Because it definitely is it's a pretty direct effort to get people to kind of come on board and participate. And I mean, the group that had discussed it felt that it would be worth trying. So it might help to address some of the concerns that you've had. The other thing I would say, and I think Tracy would echo this, is if, and I think I may be repeating myself, if even in a multi-unit dwelling, if you are set up so within your unit, you have a little green bin, and you have some place for the waste, and you're able to do something with your recyclables. That's the first step in success, is being well set up. And secondly, if you have a 12-unit apartment building, then you're entitled to have 12 carts green, 12 carts black. And so having overflowing carts shouldn't be an issue in that circumstance. And in terms of where we are, like in terms of cleaning up properties, we, I would say historically, have from time to time done cleanups, but the evidence would tell us that that is not effective, that it doesn't change behavior at all. People just are like, I don't need to sort. Someone eventually is just going to come and clean it up for me, like the city, right? The city has done some of that, and that's not a criticism. We've done it as well, but it doesn't seem to be the solution. Does that answer your question? I know it's not necessarily the solution you were hoping.
But I think it's just an ongoing issue. Like you said, we are going in cleaning up, but it isn't changing the behavior. We do have repeat properties. And it's sheer volume. I mean, you just have to go there and see, and I don't know what's driving that other than the occupants that are in there that's generating all of this excessive amount of garbage. But I think there needs to be a bit of a heavier hand on the residents, or I'm not convinced it's the responsibility necessarily of the property owner. They're not there most times and seeing what's happening. They're just dealing with it after the fact and seeing what is happening. And it's also increasing rodents of mice and rats and so on and so forth. So certainly I'd like to know what the plan is with the city based on that the collaboration between the three parties, and if it's something that can be addressed and move forward. Hopefully, anything will help, I guess, right? So I appreciate it. No, thank you though.
Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you for coming. This was it was good information to have. I want to circle back to the areas that you did identify, the Bayfield, the Douglas, and the Passmore. Is this an approach that you've tried before? And what has been if it's been tried before, what has been the, I guess, level of success with this approach?
So we've certainly tried this in multi-unit dwellings and had great success. And Tracy could probably tell you a story about a recent situation where at an apartment building, 36 units?
That one was 60 some, I guess.
A large number of where the carts were being rejected consistently for probably a couple of months. She and somebody else went in and did a presentation, and she monitored for 8 weeks after that. There was not one cart rejected in 8 weeks.
Okay, and I'd be curious to know I'd like to know some follow-up on this one, just because it's a recent one. It's something that I'd love to know what the impact has been, what the follow-up has been, it's one thing to go around to the residents and say, hey, we're doing presentations at Jack Blanchard Center. It's another thing to show up.
Yeah.
And it's great to lead the cart to the horse, but if it's not going to drink the water, then it's a fruitless effort.
Yes, so
So-
we do have the compliance officer and the bylaw officer for the city of Charlottetown are going back out on the 30th of June.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to kind of provide some report from what they find, but
Okay.
also, if carts are still being rejected, we will get that, I mean, like, we get that information at
Okay.
Island Waste. We get a report from the driver.
Yeah, I think that'd be good for us to know if we could get that later on. I do have a question about the black bin and how that works, because the black waste either goes to the landfill or is incinerated, correct?
That's correct.
So is there a determination made as to which is going where? Like, you were referencing about the recycle people sitting on the conveyor belt and removing the contaminated pieces and doing that on the organic side as well too. But on how do you determine what gets incinerated and what goes to landfill? Or is it just whatever doesn't get burned goes to the landfill?
No, it's generally speaking, it's about the division of population in Prince Edward Island. So most of the waste in Queens and Kings County that's burnable goes to the incinerator. And most of the waste probably all the waste, pretty much, in Prince County usually
okay.
goes
'Cause
to the
it's up in
landfill.
Wellington.
Just in terms of proximity, right?
Okay.
And also, though, because the incinerator can only incinerate
So much,
26,000 tons a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with we're getting a new unit, aren't we?
No, they've submitted a proposal, and it's back to planning for some modifications. Remember, we went through that?
Yeah, okay. I don't know, we have so many things going through planning, I can't remember exactly where we're at. Okay, all right. Yeah, good, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay. Deputy?
Thank you, and thank you, folks, for coming in tonight and doing this presentation. As counselors, we seem to be the first phone call, city government, and so we get the phone calls, and a lot of times, we try and direct our residents, and I'm just wondering if you have any advice on some of the things as counselors that we can do to help our residents when we're their first phone call.
Well, thank you so much for asking. We would love to help. We would love to have your help. I mean, we know as elected officials that you have lots of influence and you have relationships with the people in the city and the people that live in your areas. And so things that would be really helpful, encouraging people to sort, sharing the materials that we have shared with you around sorting, like the tools that are available, pointing people to the IWMC website or the Recycle Coach app, instead of people relying on what they see, in social media or on Google, because very often that information is not accurate. So we do have a website that's updated regularly and managed and has lots of really good information and resources on it. And I guess the other thing that I would say is, and to Councillor Beck's point, if we feel that this was a successful effort, however you define success, there's an opportunity, I think, there for other councillors, if you're having difficulties in your area, to say to us, could we, if we set up a community sorting presentation in our neighborhood, would you come? We will come, absolutely, because we think it's really important that you give people as much information as you can. So we would love to have your, support, and we would. Oh, and the other thing I should mention is we have a customer service center, and the folks at the other end of the line have incredible knowledge about how the system works. So even if you have a question, if you don't want to go to our website and you don't want to use the app, you can still call and talk to a person. Now, you might get a voicemail, but they endeavor to call folks back in about 30 minutes. And so you might get, and they'll get back to you, and even they can answer those questions. So we would be really, really pleased to have your support to kind of get the message out, I guess. Thank you for the question.
Councilor McAleer?
Yeah, no, thanks for the presentation. It's great communication and helpful. Just curious, just on the data piece, we live in a data world, I guess, in a lot of ways. Do you have, are you able to track what that's looking like and trending in terms of the hits, I guess, if you will, to your site? And does it continue to grow and Just curious.
It's a very good question. And so we have a software program that we use that allows us to track, but it doesn't allow us to create reports or to sort of do trending information. So if we want to do that, essentially it's a manual count, which when you have over 76,000 residents in PEI, that's a pretty onerous task. In our new strategic plan, we do actually, making sure that we have the technology and the resources to do the work is one of the things that we know is important. So we know it's important to be able to report. But as an organization that has limited, I'm going to say limited resources, we really need to be thoughtful about where we're spending them. But I would say that that increasing our capacity to report is important, and it is one of the things that we're talking about and trying to figure out how to do.
Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, folks, for your presentation. Just a couple of things that I want to sort of bring up is we keep saying we want to educate people, but we all know humans are humans, and some will say, the heck with it, because the city was here last week to pick it up, they'll be here the next time to pick it up, and once again, as Justin said too, it sort of reflects back to us. Like, we're sending our own public works crew in at something that is not our responsibility, to a certain extent, because people will not separate if they don't feel like separating in apartment buildings. They'll just load it up and load it up and load it up, and then they'll say, well, that's not my garbage, that's his garbage, things like that. So this is a thing, like, and I'm all for education, but at the same time, it's very frustrating for us as a city to keep sending our crews out to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Picard.
Thank you. Just one more comment. Just to build on what Councillor Yankoff brought up was, most of the calls that we get regarding garbage are from the neighboring properties. So we're left navigating around how to address their concerns about garbage. So education and providing materials wouldn't work in that case. I think what Alana might have been, or Councillor Yankoff might have been asked is, what kind of advice can you provide to us to a neighboring property who is frustrated with garbage that's all over the place, blowing around all over the place? Is it call Island Waste Management? Is that what kind of direction can we give them to address so that it gets addressed? I mean, we can't go knock on every apartment door and help, not that we don't want to, but it would be impossible for us to be providing education and information to residents around that and supporting you because of the sheer volume of apartments that we don't know where it's coming from. I mean, there obviously is individual properties, and that also may become uncomfortable to approach a particular property as a councillor and say, we see you have a garbage problem. We'd like for you to here's some information. Here's that could get tense, depending on what the people felt. So, although I appreciate you're looking for help in that way, that's a little bit of a slippery slope as to what we can do there as well. So I just wanted to add on to that in the sense of what that may look like, and the expectations. Willing to do what we can, but there's probably some areas there. So look at it from the perspective too. We get a lot of calls from surrounding residents who are wanting us to address what they're visually seeing on a continual basis, right? Because there's a lot of apartments that are surrounded by residential properties too, and other apartments. So that's what we field calls on a lot of times.
Okay, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. And interesting, because I've already had some meetings with Island Waste Watch with the MLAs. Actually, I'm one of the fortunate ones that are going to get the opportunity to do some education in August and try to. The community calls them the garbage bandits are out again because there's been so much rejection. And one thing we've asked is maybe to try and identify problematic areas, in particular with some data collection, when we know that all of Barber Circle, 3 carts were picked up, 17 were rejected. Obviously, if we see that consistently, there's something going on, and they either need some information and some education, or we got to figure out a better solution. And we do know apartment buildings are always problematic, and we have to continue to work towards some sort of a solution because it's not working. Whether through our planning department, we start to make sure that even though there's not enough space for each apartment to have their own bin, maybe that's what we have to require as a city, because they're obviously not doing that because of space, but then that lack of space creates issues. One question I had, and had a resident reach out because they're trying to use a recycle app, which, by the way, is really user-friendly, and I started to use it. In a family of 6, we're not always ideal, and I have also had the experience of not having my garbage picked up, so I wasn't happy. Try, but sometimes I have
You got a
lazy.
collection of
I'm going to
rejection
blame the
stickers?
kids.
You have a
Always
relec-
deflect,
down
blame
the
everybody
basement.
else. And I've probably done it myself on the fly. But is that app updated regularly with consistent information and monitored? Because there's been some feedback where maybe it's not been, there's been some contradictory messaging happening on the app.
That's up to Molly.
Sorry, I'm just. Oh, yeah, it's totally fine. Hi. So it is. That's part of my daily routine at work. I did some work actually on updating Recycle Coach today, and it is an app that's used across North America. So we have a representative in Toronto that we work with, and I'm in contact with her sometimes on a daily basis, or it depends. Just making sure that not only the sorting information is accurate to our guidelines, but also there's a lot of like blog type information and discovery information, and just making sure that that also aligns with us on PEI. So it's certainly something that is part of my daily routine.
So I would encourage in that situation, I would ask if you would ask the individual who's reporting that to you to just give us a call and let us know. It may be something that for some reason we're not aware of.
But I think that's was the messaging that happened, and I think that conversation has been happening. So, it's better if we can just find a way to collaborate and work together for the betterment. Thank you very much.
Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, thank you. Just to come back to, and I think Councillor Matart was kind of digging at it, the capacity thing, like with the, the 36 and the 48 and the multiple units. Just take a 36 unit, each has a black bin and a green bin, correct? And then we don't know how many people, I guess, are living in a unit, but, there's lots, maybe units where there's, there's multiple people. There's a capacity issue, like you get the unsightly premises thing, is it more of a sorting thing, and is there enough capacity? With one, a black and a green per unit, like is that sufficient to?
It should be sufficient. It should be sufficient. And that's what our evidence would tell us, that it should be sufficient.
So then what's leading to the unsightly thing? It's a sorting problem.
I expect it's likely a sorting problem, yes. And so if the collection truck comes and the driver's job is to lift the lid, inspect, and if there's contamination in the cart, they're required as part of their job to reject the cart. So that's likely what it is unsorted materials. And as I said, we don't have any authority to issue fines. We also don't have heavy equipment at Island Waste Management Corporation even if we were contemplating doing a large cleanup, we don't actually have equipment to do that.
Okay. Just wanted to tell councillors that the CAO and I think Scott put out a email on Sightly Properties Working Committee update. So that just went to your inbox. Talks about the format or process. Is that right, CAO Eleanor? So if you just want to take a look at that, it's about working with IWMC and the Department of Public Health and the city. So did you want to, Karen, was there anything else?
I think Tracy wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note that a lot of times with multi-unit dwellings, the property owner or manager may opt not to take the full complement of carts, and it's due to spacing issues or parking. They don't want to impede their parking spaces. So that happens with a lot of the existing properties, whereas newer ones I do find are being more conscientious of that and ensure that they have enough space for the full complement of carts. So if you had an apartment, I'll just use a 12 unit for an example, and a family of 4 in each unit, you could potentially get away with only 6 carts per unit, like 6 carts overall, and just share between 2 units. If you have any more than that in units, you really should have enough carts for each unit, but lately there seems to be a lot of the existing units only have a half of what they should have for carts, even though they are entitled to more.
But just quick, but on my bill, when I get my property tax, there's an IWMC fee of $212 per year, Karen?
213 at the moment. It's actually,
213, I know it's going up.
the approved rate is $236, but it's.
So if I have
subsidized.
60 units in my apartment building, do I pay 60 times 213?
Yes.
Okay.
Every apartment would be considered a
That's
residential
right.
unit.
Okay. Councilor McKinnon?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for coming in, ladies. Most of my questions have been asked, but I have a couple that, one, I'm not sure, do you have any answers of what happened this spring with spring cleanup? Some of the streets were missed with like half of the streets altogether were missed. Had to make some phone calls. Second question that came into me today was commercial waste, where you would indicate that the organic waste is gone for Class A compost used for farmers on the fields. Whereas, what happens with commercial waste from residents, like all the food waste and, not residents, sorry, commercial restaurants? Where does that go, and why isn't that sorted as to the same standards as residents?
Well, it's supposed to be sorted to the same standards as residents. We don't have, at least at this time, we don't have a mandate to do commercial enforcement around sorting behavior. So there certainly are lots of commercial establishments that are sorting their materials and they're going to the proper stream. So if it's organics, it's going to the central compost facility. But certainly, if you just take a walk around, you can see that there are some businesses that that don't have the receptacles. It's on our plan for the future, but it's a big thing to kind of get our arms around to figure out how to get that compliance from the commercial sector. That doesn't really, well, I mean, that's the answer, and then your question about the spring cleanup, I don't know the answer off the top of my head, and we'd have to probably go back and have a look.
Yeah, we do get driver reports every day from what areas that was completed, sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. Oh, can it slide? Yeah, so we do get reports from the drivers on a daily basis for spring and fall cleanup of what streets were completed on what days. To speak why some areas weren't done, I would have to look back. I mean, like I said, we do get the reports, and for the most part, I believe most areas were collected. If people didn't have their stuff out on time, that would certainly affect why they weren't collected, because if the truck was there on Monday and they only put their stuff out on Wednesday, well, the truck's not going back. He only makes one swipe through. We also had another, level or step put in place to confirm the driver what he's reporting on those spring cleanups. So the driver's supervisor actually went around the day after the reports were submitted to ensure what was submitted as being done was done. So that was new this year as well. And anything he's seen that may have not have been done, the driver did go back for. So.
If you had particular areas that you had concerns about, feel free to either send the folks to our customer service center or send one of us a note just about that in particular, and we may be able to provide more information.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Just wondering, you mentioned from the presentation that you had 76,000 residents. Do you have the data, is it 3% of rejection? Is there such a number of how often or how, for on a yearly basis, or on a weekly basis, is it 2% of bins get rejected? Or is there even such a thing to have that data? Oh, I missed it. Dang it. Sorry. 1.12, is that what it was?
In Charlottetown, in a week in June, we did a manual snapshot, and it was about 1%, just slightly over 1% that weren't sorted, which means nearly 99% of people were collected and sorted.
For sure. So to follow up on that, because I missed that in the presentation, is this presentation available for us to be emailed to us so that we have it, so we can refer back to it?
Can we, Molly, Karen, or Tracy?
Yeah, I think I did, yeah, I think you do have
Tracy
it
has it.
already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay,
Manager of
thank you.
Minutes and council meetings got a hold of it. Okay. Karen, oh. Councilor Bernard?
Last one, only be a second clarification. Karen, you had mentioned earlier that we're talking about 12-unit apartments and 12 green bins, 12 black bins, so there shouldn't be overloading. And I'm wondering, do you mean shouldn't be overloading because if they're processing their garbage correctly, or shouldn't be overloading because you can use another bin?
No, if it's properly sorted, you shouldn't need more space.
Okay, I can't help but wonder if a lot of the overloading is new immigrants that just don't know how the program works. We got a ton of new immigrants, as you know.
It's not just, like, we know that it isn't just people that are new to Prince Edward Island. We do know that it's a change, even if you're coming from Alberta or Quebec, what we're doing here is different. So there is a change. So I would say that the people that are learning the program for the first time, there's a bit of work associated with that. So we've actually been doing some work with IRSA, the Immigrant and Refugee Service Association. We've been doing some work with IRSA to try to get those that sorting information into the hands of at least new Canadians, and that's also why we're increasing the number of sort of languages that we're using for our resources, so that people can get the information in a language that they're familiar with.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Twill from Ward 4.
In your presentation, you referenced Douglas Street, Bayfield Street, and Passmore Street. First question I have is, have you targeted those areas and not to pick up the black bins and the garbage?
No.
No? Well, that's the feeling in the community, because you're a representative that goes around and puts the cards on the black bins, right? It's not the drivers. It's a representative, he or her, that goes around and puts the rejection stickers on the carts. But a feeling is amongst a lot of the residents in these three particular streets is that this neighborhood's being targeted. That's the perception. And they believe that in terms of reality, because no other three streets in the city of Charlottetown have been targeted like Bayfield, Douglas, and Passmore. That's my first point. You're talking about a presentation on the 25th, but you're going to go around tomorrow and hand out invitations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so do you really think, Karen, that that's enough time, leadway? If you want to invite public participation, you only give them a day's notice?
So I understand.
I mean, with all due respect, hey, we're talking public consultation, so I'm no expert when it comes to timeframes and timelines, but I would think that a week's notice would be a realistic expectation in order to invite people to a meeting. And if you're looking at Douglas Street, Bayfield, and Passmore in particular, as I suggest, the meeting could have been held at St. Jean's School. But nonetheless, you're going to go around tomorrow. You're going to hand out the invitations, and the meeting's on Thursday. What kind of a turnout do you really expect? And how?
Councilor Twill.
No, with all due
just one
respect, Mr.
second.
Mayor.
Councilor Twill, we have the CEO of
Okay, you know
Island
what,
Waste
Mr.
Management
Mayor?
Corporation and her associates to give us an overview. Like, I know you want to drill down for Ward 4, but again, questions that we've been asking are questions to sort of look out for the whole city. So that's why I'm trying to focus you back into that. They're here to answer anything we want to ask, but we got a city to look after. Karen?
I'm happy to, just to respond to one of your comments, Councillor Tweel. So the reason that the presentation is scheduled for this week, and I agree with you, it is a quick turnaround, but I understood that there was some urgency among the residents in those streets to have the cleanup done, and I wanted to get the cleanup done in a timely manner. But it doesn't make sense to do a cleanup and then afterwards do a presentation about sorting. Like the order is reversed. So that's the reason, that is the reason. And the reason we're having it at Jack Blanchard Hall is because that's the place that we could get that was available.
Mr. Mayor, if you're going to cut me off, tell me now and I won't bother. So,
No, just,
no, really.
no,
I
listen.
came here to
the
participate
rules
in the
are
process.
very simple.
I've
We got
taken notes.
three representatives
Yeah, I
with the
know,
CEO
so-
from the IWMC.
I
Just try to keep the questions general. They're here to listen and
Yeah, well, okay,
and
stop
feedback,
interfering.
correct?
Stop interfering.
No, just
Okay.
stay
so-
focused.
See, this is what he does. This is what he does all the time.
No, don't, just focus.
Okay. So if you look at folks that have to take their garbage because GFL won't pick them up, they have to take them out to GFL's site, and they have to pay. So there's a strong feeling as well is that residents are double paying. Okay? The onus is on them to take the garbage out to GFL's site, and they have to pay. So double dipping is taking place, and instead of rewarding people for taking the initiative to take the garbage out to the site, why would they be charged when they're already paying for it in their taxes?
So the materials, if they're sorted, are collected at the curb. And if they're not sorted, then there is an option that includes taking it out for disposal. But we do have a surcharge for mixed waste because we're not supposed to be accepting material that isn't sorted. And that applies to the residents of the streets in Charlottetown, and it applies to the residents across Prince Edward Island.
The email that was sent out today, just recently, or just a few minutes ago, by the CAO, referencing an email that was sent out on May 9th, I would suggest a lot has changed since May 9th, and Mr. Adams is not here. Thought he was, but he's not here. So anyway, I would suggest a lot has changed. For example, if you look at the recyclable blue bags, when people put them out on time, and they're not being picked up, even though, to my mind, there is full compliance, what happens is people will take liberty and put out bags of garbage that have nothing to do with recycling right beside the recycling bags, and then all of a sudden, they're left there. And they're left there for an extended period of time, not being picked up. Reference was made to fall and spring cleanup. I know I've talked to Public Works. A lot of deficiencies with respect to fall and spring cleanup, where, once again, the city of Charlottetown has to come along and pick up non-domestic materials and truck them out to the site. I see that as problematic. One of the biggest mysteries with respect to the black bins is, as you pointed out, I think we're 20 years into island waste management, and never before has the community experienced all these rejection stickers. Never before. And what the community saying, and I'm talking to lifelong residents that live in these particular communities. Okay, I'm not talking people that just moved in yesterday. Some of them have lived there for 40 and 45 years, and they said, we have never, ever experienced anything like it. And they're asking why. So, as you pointed out, a lot of it's being trucked out to PEI energy systems. They're using that to provide energy for, whether it be the Queen Elizabeth Hospital or schools, some of the institutions in the downtown, here even at City Hall, probably Province House for that matter. So, the question is, why does it have to be so complicated? after 20 years where people never had to experience black bin rejections, tags that are put out by representatives from Island Waste Management, why does it have to be so complicated?
Well, the system has been in place for, as we've talked about, more than 20 years, and about nearly 99% of the residents in Charlottetown are sorting and having their carts collected. We have a program compliance inspector, and their job is to go out. They go to different parts of Prince Edward Island. Sometimes they're in Charlottetown, sometimes they're in, I don't know, Surrey. So they're all over the place, depending on the day. And their job is to go street by street, essentially, and to inspect carts. And if there's contamination, their job is to tag the carts. So I don't think that there is any intention or ill will towards the folks that live on the streets that you've indicated. I think that there have been lots of places where there have been rejection stickers issued by the compliance inspector, not just on those 3 streets.
So Karen, just before you do that, so the slide you showed is with 19,600 approximate number of year-round residential customers collected weekly. There were 220 for that year?
There were 220 that were rejected the week of June 24th in the Charlottetown area out of
all of Charlottetown.
All of Charlottetown, out of 19,000 collections, more than 19,000 collections.
Councillor Twill.
Yeah. So with the refusal of the black bins being picked up and then garbage bags picked up recently, and I know you're aware, because you sent the picture to the Premier's office, I was out with the MLA, and we went around in his truck. It was his initiative. Full credit to the Honourable Rob Lance. And we went around and we picked up the bags of garbage. Passmore, Bayfield, primarily. And I just couldn't get over, because those bags were there for an extended period of time, the amount of maggots and insects and stuff that is so deplorable. So from a health hazard perspective, who falls on the sword? Is it Island Waste Management? Is it GFL? Is it the provincial government? Is it the city of Charlottetown? Who falls on the sword and is ultimately responsible? Councillor Mattard talked about, rats, mice, wildlife. You can let your imagination run wild. So who is ultimately responsible? Because you know what? Those are real issues in this neighborhood. These are narrow streets and the garbage is all over the place. So who is ultimately responsible?
So we're responsible to collect at the curb sorted materials.
Councillor Twill, are you wrapping up pretty soon?
Yeah, so from a health, no, I have to understand, Mr. Mayor. So from a health hazard perspective, who's responsible? Is it the Department of Environment? Is it the Chief Medical Officer? I want to know these answers, because if things don't get rectified and rectified soon, then we're going to have to look at other measures. With all due respect to what you're trying to do, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but there's many deficiencies, and I'm not going to let this community suffer the way it is. I can't allow that to happen.
Okay.
I can't allow it to happen. So, and the residents aren't going to let it happen, and I know the MLA is not going to let it happen as well.
Karen,
Yes.
so when we were first elected to council, I know Councillor Bernard and I back in 2000, that was the start of Island Waste Management Corporation. You contract at that time Superior Sanitation and Myers and other collectors. Now it's GFL. So GFL is the applicator or the owner of those rejection slips. Do they get instructions from you, from IWMC, to reject them, or are they making calls as they go door to door?
So they're required, and they receive training, all the drivers, doesn't matter who they're working for, they receive training on our sorting guidelines. And then part of their role is to inspect the carts at the curb. So they lift it up, They look to see, is there contamination? If there's contamination, they will reject it. And if there's not contamination, they will collect it. So they work for GFL, but we have a contract with GFL for curbside collection of organics and waste. We actually have one for recyclables with them as well. And we have new contracts with them starting in the fall. We went to public tender last July for a curbside collection of organics and waste in the 6 regions of Prince Edward Island, and GFL were the successful proponent on all 6 contracts. So they take over in Prince County the 1st of September, and in the rest of Prince Edward Island, the other 4 regions on the 1st of November.
Right. So when this whole program first started, 23 years, 24 years ago, anything that you didn't know where it would go, compost, recycle, you just threw it into waste. That's not the case today because people have to sort their waste. Is that what we're telling them to do?
Yeah, and those really have, those have been the guidelines forever. The things that have changed or evolved over that 20-some years are that there are things that used to be in the waste stream that are no longer in the waste stream. So I talked about things like electronics and mattresses and household hazardous waste was probably never in the waste stream. But there were things that we now have stewardship programs for that would have been in the waste stream that are no longer. But more or less, even from the beginning, there was organics was going in one cart and waste was going in another, and we were doing recycling.
Well, I've been receiving photos via Facebook, email, text messages, and Tracy's going to put some of them up now, just to show you that it's not just in one area of the city that this is happening. This is happening throughout the city, and it's blue bags, it's debris that's by your commercial, I call them bulk bins. This is what we're facing throughout the city. And these are sent to me via, as I said, Facebook, email, and text messages. They're saying, like, what's going on? And I think that this committee, Unsightly Properties Working Committee, is definitely a big start.
Yeah, and we're happy. I haven't seen the email, and I don't know that it was sent to me, but, so I don't know what the contents of the email were, but as we've indicated to city staff from probably last spring, we're happy to work with city staff to try to find solutions, and with environmental health and whoever else are the right people to be at the table. We have a certain amount of authority and mandate, and we'd like to exercise those to be helpful, but there are limits to what we're able to do.
Councillor Twill.
Another one of the challenges, people put their carts out on time, and that people that don't live in the community that are traveling the streets, we know who they are. They're interfering with the garbage, taking out garbage, putting in their own garbage, dropping off needles and crack pipes and all these other things. And that's also contributing to the rejections as well. And the onus, unfortunately, is now back in the residents that have to deal with this dilemma, particularly black carts. So that's another thing that I've been hearing from the residents as well. That's very problematic.
Well, Councillor Bernard, did you have a question? Did you want to? No? Well, definitely IWMC has been a success story. Ontario still has the wet and dry bags. We're way ahead of them. And you look at other provinces, way ahead of them. There's some glitches in the system, but I think you've been made aware of we got to work together, and I think I just sent you Eleanor's email that you can have a look at it.
Yeah, and Mayor Brown, we're happy to work with the city and really anybody. We want the program to be a success, and in order for it to be a success, we know that people, they need to have the information, they need to know what it is they can do to be successful in participating in the program and keep having a program that PEI is proud of.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Molly. Okay, thank you very much again. 4B, Strategic priorities, communications, intergovernmental cooperation, resolution attached. Councilman Beck, you going to speak to it, or?
Yeah, just as a background of how this came about, it was brought forward by His Worship, who, when he was at the FCM meeting out in Calgary, attended a session which piqued his interest, and it involved the FCM. Basically, the essence of it is a request on our behalf to support FCM to push the government, the federal government, to collaborate with provinces and territories to come up with solutions to support the mental health crisis that is going on within our cities. And we are not immune to it. And it's basically just a letter of support on behalf of us all. And that's kind of what we're looking for here tonight, is looking for your endorsement to basically say, yeah, let's go ahead, let's try and find good proactive solutions, ways to divert the resources in the appropriate manner. And that's really the gist of what it is. If I've missed anything, Your Worship, you can feel free to chime in. I'm trying to move this along. But basically, that's what it is. We're looking for council endorsement to support FCM to continue the work to try and support those in need in our community. It's basically the essence of it. Thank you. Can I ask?
Questions called? All those in favor? Councilor Drawn?
In favor?
Okay. What? You can read it. It's a long resolution, isn't it? It is. Can we pass it in? Do we have to read it? Yeah, I have to read it, I guess, just for the record.
I mean, we don't have to, but yes.
Can you? Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Beck, seconded by Deputy Mayor Yankoff. Be it resolved, whereas nonviolent mental health crisis is on the rise in Canada with significant unmet needs leading to substance use, homelessness, and frequent interactions with the criminal justice system. And whereas police are increasingly tasked with managing complex social issues, responding to calls involving residents experiencing mental health crisis, homelessness, or drug overdoses that require specialized interventions, which are often beyond the capacity of police or local governments to address. And whereas the police resources and budgets are strained by responding to nonviolent crisis calls that can often be addressed by other first responders, such as mental health practitioners, diverting police attention away from critical public safety concerns such as violent crime. Whereas local governments in Canada and their police services, in collaboration with community organizations, are increasingly pioneering innovative approaches and partnerships to divert crisis calls from police to more appropriate resources, ensuring individuals in crisis receive necessary services and support while alleviating the burden on law enforcement. Therefore, be it resolved that FCM calls on the federal government to collaborate with the provinces and territories to provide funding and support for local governments to implement innovative pilot projects for mental health crisis response, such as enabling partnerships between mental health practitioners, community organizations, and police to divert nonviolent crimes involving mental health, homelessness, and substance abuse away from police responses where appropriate. And further, be it resolved that FCM calls on the federal government to work with the provinces and territories to provide additional supports to municipalities to scale up existing programs and partnerships that have demonstrated positive outcomes in diverting mental health crisis, homelessness, and substance use from police services, building upon successful models and evidence-based practices.
CAO Eleanor, thank you very much. Questions called. All those in favor? Councillor Drawn?
In favor?
Okay. Just 1 second, hold on. Go ahead.
Just as a point of order or point of information, we've had consent agenda items on our consideration through our work at strategic priorities. This would be an example of where a consent agenda item could fall. So if you're looking for concrete sort of examples, this would be an example of one. Just sort of keep that in mind because we will be looking at that whole, as we look at our procedural bylaw and possible changes to our procedural bylaw. That was one of the items that did come forth for consideration. This would be an example of one where it could be a consent agenda.
And we could have let it go, but I just wanted to make sure it was read in
No, that's fine.
in the minutes because.
And that would be following due process as it currently stands. But if we're looking to make changes to our procedural bylaw, this, and consent agenda items did come up in here in the past, this would be something where it could fit.
And probably less reading from our CAO.
Well, that's just in case in point, because.
We could do it by AI.
Well, no, but the other part is that we're trying to move things along in an expedient manner and trying to make our meetings as efficient as possible. And I know I'm taking up time, not making it inefficient, but trying to prove a point. But this is a way that we can do to facilitate our meetings and to not take unnecessary time up. Thank you.
Point well taken. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. I'm just getting my agenda here. And again, I just wanted to say that the package that was given to us tonight by IWMC, you will be mailing that out or emailing that out? Okay. Okay, I have the next one being 4C, for Public Works, and Councillor McCabe, Public Works resolutions. Councillor
Thank
McCabe.
you, Your Worship. Yep, we do have 4 resolutions tonight. The first resolution on is it the first one? Yes, the police intercepted SUV. You'll notice on your desk, there's actually a separate resolution. I'm going to let Mr. Jenkins speak for a moment to why you received the second one, and we can decide collectively as a group if we would like to rescind the original and transfer it to the more
Councillor
appropriate.
McCabe, I just want to ask, Councillor Duran, do you have a copy of it? Probably not.
Did you?
Councillor Duran?
Yes, I do.
You do
Yes,
have-
I do. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. So I'm going to let
Thank you
Mr.
very
Jenkins,
much.
our Director of
Go ahead,
Finance, talk.
Mr. Jenkins, go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So just a quick recap of how we got to where we are with the police interceptor SUVs. Back in early 2023, we called for a tender for 8 new hybrid SUVs. Fair Isle Ford won that tender and were given a purchase order back in December of 23 to fulfill the order for 8 hybrid SUVs. 4 months later, give or take, Fair Isle Ford called and advised the city that they were not able to provide those hybrid vehicles as the engine components were not available from Ford, and that it would be late 2025 before those vehicles could be delivered. With that knowledge, the fleet manager reached out to myself to say, where do we go from here? The advice that we received from Ford was that we should probably try to tender for some combustion, regular gas combustion SUVs, non-hybrid units, because the others wouldn't be available for some time. Our advice at that time was that because we were looking then for gasoline engines, that there would be other suppliers who would be able to provide those, so we should retender that as with the specification of a conventional engine. So we did that, and in May 2024, the tender was issued, and we received 2 bids. The recommendation from the fleet manager and Public Works at that time was to go with Ford units, even though they weren't Ford. Farrell Ford wasn't the Ford dealer was not the low tender, and the reason for that recommendation was that unbeknownst to the procurement process, the police service had secured a number of accessories for the specific to the Ford units, to the value of probably somewhere handy $60,000, including some equipment that was coming off 4 units that were going to be retired. But these accessories are specific to an individual model of car, make and model of car, so they weren't able to be transported onto the successful bidders, the low tender, and that was the reason for the recommendation at that point. There was some concern expressed both at administration and from council that the recommendation from staff wasn't reflective of the low bid getting the work. And so we had a bit of a predicament, recognizing that probably in the end to go with the low tender, it would cost the city a little bit more money because of the investment in the accessories that would have to be disposed of or sold probably at a loss. But also recognizing that we had an obligation to the supplier who had won the tender and received submitted the low bid and really was entitled to that business. So with that, Chief Brad McConnell and myself met with other staff, and we decided it was worth the trip out to see the low bidders, Reliable Motors, the McLennan family, and just have a chat to see if there might be a middle ground that we could come to some arrangement that would work for both them and the city. And we come back with with support from Brad McLennan in splitting the order, having 4 Fords and 4 Dodge products. That was back in June 25th, and that's what we proceeded with in good faith until I received a note from Councillor Tweel this morning outlining that his information was that the Reliable Motors folks were growing less comfortable with the sharing of the award tender. And based on that information, I reached out to Brad, the general manager at the dealership, and met with him this afternoon. And in short, I think, McLennan family are very strong on customer service, and I think Brad's initial response was to work with the customer, in this case the city of Charlottetown, and try to accommodate what was an unusual but difficult situation. And his first response was to be accommodating to that. So he was quite enthusiastically supporting the compromise. But I think subsequent to that day on June 25th, I think he had probably had some conversations with some of his staff, which may have expressed some concerns, a little bit of time in terms of just pondering, having a sober second thought about the implications that this might have for the employment of his staff and the impacts on the family business and the families that work there. He was feeling less and less comfortable with the split. Based on that and understanding that Reliable Motors was the low tender, their bid was compliant in terms of meeting the specification. It's our advice, based on this new information, that we would recommend not what was in the report that went to committee, but rather to follow the low tender, the low submission, and award the work to Reliable Motors based on their compliant bid, and the fact that they've had reconsidered the impact that the compromise would have on their staff and business. So I think we are appreciative of their gesture of good faith to try to come to a compromise, but understand completely that in the end, given some time to think about it, that they've reconsidered and for good reason. And they're, from our perspective, they are the winner of the RFP and would be entitled to that work unless they were comfortable with another arrangement, which it appears at this point in time they're not. So the council, you certainly have options now. You could send this report back to committee to be reconsidered, or we've also drafted another resolution which would reflect the decision of council if you so choose to proceed with the award of the 8 SUVs to Reliable Motors. And either way, we're comfortable. There is a bit of a time sensitivity, and from my perspective, I would favor if council was agreeable to move to support this, the revised resolution awarding the 8 to Reliable Motors, both for the police service because they are in need of vehicles. They've got a number of units that are aging and not in great shape. And as well for the dealership, the vendor, they want to get their orders placed and get in the queue so that they can meet the delivery requirements. So happy to answer any questions, but that's the new information that I wanted to provide to you today.
Councillor Matard, can Councillor McCabe go first? Do you want to go?
can, yep.
You're the
Chair
chair?
file, yep.
Go ahead there.
Yeah, no, I'm going to, I'll wait for his question, but my proposal would be, there's no sense really deferring this anymore. At the end of the day, we have a process and a policy that we follow around procurement, and I think that the newer resolution, in my opinion, is what we need to consider, which would be to purchase the 88 cars from Reliable Motors. But I will wait to, I'd like to put that one on the floor.
Mine's necessarily not a question, it's more of a statement. I know this has been a, a complex file right from the start until the 11th hour here this evening on making a decision as to where we go. A couple of things that concerned me about this file was there seemed to be a number of compelling arguments here for continuing with the Ford model. Equipment, even actually cognitive abilities and memory muscle and stuff for the officers who are driving these Ford vehicles and how they know how to handle them and stuff. So I question, why were we tendering out for vehicles if we knew that we were ultimately, the disposition was we were going with Ford regardless of what the outcome was, it seemed to be, because we had a low bid and we still wanted the Ford model. So maybe from a tendering perspective, when it comes to specialized equipment and specialized vehicles like this, that we need to have a set of conditions around that we can sole source out to a particular entity for that reason. That could be machinery as well. It doesn't necessarily mean it's just to do with police cars. There could be certain machinery that can only be used, whether it be in water and sewer or public works or parks. And so second to that is, so we are here tonight faced with the decision to go ahead and honor the bid of bringing in now 8 Dodge vehicles. So now we're introducing yet another level of equipment and gear that we need to maintain in a parallel of having a Ford model. So if we, next year or the year after, we're coming again looking for tendering vehicles, we could be going all Ford that time, and then we had this investment for all this Dodge equipment that is no longer going to be of any value because we've now got 8 more Fords, or vice versa, we're going to Dodge. So I think this is really an opportunity for the city to look at the procurement aspect of these specialized vehicles. And if it's only Dodge and Ford that is in the game, then maybe that is what we work around, and it's, half the cars here and half the cars there, or whatever the case may be. Because I really think that the decision was made that Ford is what we needed, and we get into this conundrum when a low bid came in. So I just want to point that out. I take that under advisement, I think. But we do have the resolution here in front of us today, so I think we should proceed with that. But thank you.
Could just a point of clarification or point of order. Eleanor, CAO Eleanor, do we have to rescind what's in the package, or just this replaces? I just want a clarification on it.
I think you're right, but I don't think we have to rescind it. It hasn't been read here.
Just want a clarification. Okay. Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you
for that, Councillor McCabe and Dan, for your explanation and being chair and having a conversation with the police chief. Like, 4 of these vehicles were ordered from last year and 4 is under this year, so that's where the 8 is coming from, which they're in dire straits of needing, of having these vehicles, which because the other ones are they're only getting by right now. So I just want to say I'm in favor of the new resolution.
Do you want to call a question? Yeah, I know. We'll read the resolution, but, okay, call it, read the resolution. Just get it through. Trying to get this meeting
Moved by
done.
Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Be it resolved that as per the conditions of the public request for quotes for 8/2024/2025 Police Interceptor SUV all-wheel drive, the submission of reliable motors for the purchase of 8 Dodge Durango Interceptors in the amount of $498,080 plus all applicable taxes be accepted, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Okay, all those in favor?
In favor?
Okay. Councillor Bernard left, did he? Yeah, okay, 9-0. Okay. Next resolution, I think, is the waste. Councillor Drawn, you're in conflict?
Moved by
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Be it resolved that as per the conditions of the public request for quotes for construction waste disposal, the submission of landmark construction in the amount of $47,000 plus all applicable taxes be accepted, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Deputy? Just 1 second. Deputy?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, when I was going through the minutes, one of the questions that was asked and still isn't answered was the question around why now when the current area is not full yet? So that question had not been answered yet. So I'm just wondering if that question can be answered.
Councillor McCabe?
So basically, what was explained to us as committee, that was never part of an agreement that it was required to fill any particular area. When they were trying to clean up best practice, and when our new CAO came into effect, it was to kind of look at areas that maybe wasn't so tight, it was just kind of done, and to kind of put more of a formal agreement in place, which is what happened. And as a result, went to tender, and the rest of the story is history. But Scott, if I haven't clarified that correctly, then you can.
It's a good explanation. Councillor Beck?
Yeah, just a clarification again. This is annually awarded, this contract?
No, this was.
Hold on, go ahead.
No, going forward, it's going to be.
They will look at it with an option to extend, I think, as long as the services are okay and the price is in the same ballpark. They have an option to extend for 1 year, and after that, they will have to go back out to tender.
So it will not go out to a tendered process next year?
That will depend on whether or not they're happy with the service that is received and they feel it was good value for the city.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. No questions, Councillor Ramsey? Okay, questions called. All in favor? Okay, I was going to ask Councillor Drawn. 8-0. We did. Huh? Did you read it, Trace? We read it. Okay, come on, Justin. What? Jeez, you two over there. What? You're like those 2 old guys in the Muppet Show. Okay, hourly backhoe hire rates here. Okay.
Bobby can come back.
Councillor Drawn is probably.
Moved by Councillor McCabe.
Just 1 second. Councillor Drawn, you there?
Yeah, I come back into the room. Thank you.
Okay, I heard the door slamming.
Yeah, thanks.
Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Be it resolved that as per the conditions of the public request for quotes for hourly backhoe hire rates, the submission of UCC utility services in the amount of $72.50 an hour, plus all applicable taxes be accepted, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Okay. Councillor Matard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some questions around this particular tender. Looking at the awarding of this to UCC based on low bid of a difference of 50 cents from the next proponent on the list. But I think what really got me and struck me on this was that I'll just read it here verbatim. It says, based on the results of the public tendering process, the department recommends awarding this contract to UCC Services. The firm has not carried out backhoe services for the city before, and as such, would monitor the work closely to ensure they're able to provide the required services. Now, when I read that, I interpret that as if, there's not a lot of experience there. I question whether or not Public Works would have the time, the ability to be able to ensure and monitor the work from a particular vendor that hasn't done work like that. So if this is purely coming down to the tender process, which states that lowest bid, and that is the only criteria that was on this thing, then I guess so be it. By 50 cents, they're successful. However, in the tender, is there any other criteria such as experience, previous projects, other relatable work? Like there has to be something more. I'm just not really comfortable with selecting this vendor based on them not carrying out any previous work. I guess I should be addressing this to the chair, sorry, and closely monitoring them as they progress through this work. I'm not sitting comfortably with me. So,
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. As it was explained to us, new people come into play and they have to have the same opportunities, but I am going to let the manager speak to the actual tender document, what went out. I know it was explained that they checked all the boxes that were on the tender issuing document and were the lowest bid, which is why they recommended. But I'm with you. I don't know who's going to have the time to go out and make sure that the work's being done, but I'm going to let the manager address that one.
It's just not instilling confidence in me that they're the ability to do the work if we're saying we have to monitor them and closely to ensure they're able to do the work. This is just for the difference of 50 cents. Yeah.
Chief Engineer Scott Adams.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Matard. So great questions. The monitoring part, so this backhoe operator would work closely with an existing Public Works crew. So this backhoe is, we hire them to help us with replacing culverts under driveways and other stormwater work. So they are working closely with the crew that have been here for a number of years, and that crew lead is very knowledgeable on the topic and has been doing this work for a number of years for the city. So that's who we would rely on at the end of the day for feedback on the performance of the operator through the superintendent as well, who would be responsible for their crew. And as Councillor McCabe alluded to, when these tenders go out, we do require them to indicate the piece of machinery that they're going to be that they have on hand to be used for our projects, and the operator. And we always ask for a number of years of service that operator has, which they had a number of years of experience indicated in the document. So beyond what's indicated in the document, we have no reason to believe that they can't provide the service. They have signed on the dotted line saying that they can provide the service. And have met all the criteria in that RFQ, they carry insurance and those types of things. So we do have to be, our policy says we give everyone a fair chance. If they can believe they can do the work, then we give them a fair chance to do it. But just because they haven't done this work before, there will be more frequent check-ins with our crew lead to make sure that they're satisfied with the work that's being performed.
Good. Oh, sorry, Councillor Beck, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I shared Councillor Matard's, I had the same question. I don't know who UCC Utility Services is. I have a certain level of familiarity with Lee McDonald. He's been in the construction business for ever, as long as I can remember. So I assume, I think Lee's work has been, he's probably done a fair amount of work with the city and over the course of the last number of years, and I've never heard anything contrary to being providing good service. So I would, and I don't know, again, I didn't see the RFP. I didn't see, kind of what Councillor Matart was saying too, like, is the wording in there, the lowest bid is not necessarily accepted. You often see that, you've seen that in different RFPs and whatnot. So I'm kind of questioning it too. I can appreciate the fact that we have to give people opportunities to prove themselves. I mean, how do you get experience if you're not given the opportunity to gain it? So, for the splitting hairs on this one, I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable in supporting it. So, I think I would. And again, I'd like to. I didn't see the criteria or the technical scoring or anything like that, but maybe as we go forward, that's something we do have to look at in the future. Thanks.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I also were kind of the same questions as Councillor Matart and Councillor Beck. I don't know who UCC is either, whether they're local or not local. But question for the chair is, what steps are in place if UCC doesn't perform what is expected of them? Is there penalties in place? Like, what happens if they get the tender and things fall apart? Are we back to the drawing board, or?
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you for your question. No, what I've been told is if they're not able to fulfill the duties that they have indicated that they can, they will be removed and they'll move right on to the second tender contractor. But if Scott has, if that's not correct, always correct me if I'm not correct.
Councillor McKinnon, just 1 second. Go ahead.
Just a
Second time.
follow-up question. Mr. Adams alluded to, I think it was Mr. Adams, I'm not sure, about the criteria when this was when the tender was put in place, if they have the required proper equipment to fulfill the tender. Was that, because it's not here, do they have the proper equipment to fulfill what is being requested?
Okay. Are you asking the Councillor McCabe?
They have a backhoe if they're going to do backhoeing, but that was being a little bit sarcastic, so I'll let the manager answer.
Your Worship, through Councillor McKinnon. So in the document, they indicated, yes, they have a backhoe, a Volvo, forget the model number, but it is a backhoe that meets our criteria. And then they have they indicated an individual who they have indicated that has been, I forget how many years, but a number of years of experience of backhoe services. So again, it's essentially, they check those key boxes that we're looking for along with insurance requirements. And then it comes down to the low bid at the end of the day is how we would make our recommendation. And at the end of the day, the other things we are looking at, we would look at, past performance. None of these companies have had any poor performance with the city that on record. So again, there's nothing that we would not recommend UCC because they've never proven to us that they cannot do the work.
Councillor Beck, I think you were there. Hold on. Just 1 second. Deputy?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just kind of echoing what Councillor Beck said, I don't need to go into detail, but I won't be supporting staff's recommendation on this for similar reasons that I've heard here this evening, so thank you.
Councillor Beck, second time.
It kind of goes back to my question before with the waste disposal. And Madam Chair, would it be the situation where this would be an annual contract, or would it be, again, the same sort of thing where if the services rendered at the end of this year were satisfactory, they would roll over into year 2 and it would go on for a second year and then it would have to go to an RFP at that point in time?
Councillor McCabe.
think a lot of our tenders are usually put out with the condition for 1-year extension if they're happy, but I'm going to again defer to our manager just to confirm that that would be.
I think you're right.
Yeah, Your
For-
Worship, through to Councillor Beck. That's correct, yeah. There's usually the additional year if both parties agree to continue the service following the completion of year 1.
Can I
Question?
ask a question? Can I ask a question first?
Yeah, Councillor Drawn.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. You know, we sit here and we talk about policy and procedure and tender documents. Like, we have a procedural bylaw in place. You know, staff goes out for a tender, a certain company wins it, and then we have all these questions. Well, staff did the background. Staff put together the requirements. So whomever makes a bid and meets the requirements, how are we supposed to sit there and say, well, you know, we have concerns? I mean, you have a lower tender, whether it's 10 cents, 50 cents, or $1. They won the tender, you know, and it's up to them to fulfill it. If they don't fulfill it, there's situations in place where the manager or something can say, you know what, you're not doing a good enough job, we'll go somewhere else. So I lately we've been going over every contract and tender and everything. Well, that's staff's job. They put it in place. They give a recommendation. It's all in the notes. It's all in the minutes. And you read them, and then you go with the recommendation. I can't understand why we're even discussing, you know, I don't believe in this person or that person. They won the tender. It's our job to save the city taxpayer money and go with the process.
Yeah.
I don't know how we can get involved in all this stuff. I mean, I'll certainly support it because staff's recommendation on the tender. The guy has a backhoe. It's not rocket science here. If his backhoe breaks, it's up to him to get a new one. I mean, he works with city staff on these projects, digging ditches or replacing culverts or whatever he does. So it's on him. But I mean, for us to sit there and say, well, we have concerns. If we had concerns, I mean, the staff or the manager would take them forward.
Yeah.
So
I think, Councillor Drawn, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor McKay, but I think this would be the first UCC contract with the city. There's one with.
no, that's not true, Mayor Brown. You know that.
No, water and wastewater. We know that.
Oh,
But
so
this
we're
is the
splitting
first one.
hairs now.
Public Works. That's what I'm just clarifying. Is it, Scott? Or Julie? Go ahead.
This is the first time that Public Works have
Yeah.
worked collaboratively
Yeah.
with this partner, yes.
Did you hear that, Councillor Drawn?
Oh, yes, I know the background here.
Good.
I just don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
You put a tender out, someone wins it. Same as the police interceptors here. They won the tender. Shouldn't have been a question.
Yeah.
It was our fault that the mistake was made.
Okay.
So give the person the tender, move on. Same as this one. It's pretty basic. I don't know why we waste time doing this.
Okay.
It's all in the notes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mattar.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to the chair, again, that was my, I mean, I'm not disputing whether they want it. The thing that got me was if it's a fair process, they're the lowest bid, they met the criteria, I'm good with that. That's fair process. It was just the statement around, you know, do we have the ability to monitor them? So it gave me some reservation as to whether or not they could do the work. So, you know, but after Scott Manager Scott addressed my questions, you know, I feel more confident that due diligence was followed and that the proponent met all the criteria and they're the lowest bid by 40 cents. So I'm you know, that's all I'm trying to clarify in my reasoning of this particular one here. So thank you.
Okay. Question? Questions, Carl?
I just had a little information that I can provide to clarify Councillor Beck's question on the RFP document. Some of our tenders have an evaluation sheet which gives certain points for experience and jobs that they've done in similar circumstances. The bid evaluation section of the RFP document in this case was very basic. It's the award will be based upon compliance to the specifications and the lowest bid price submitted. So it really is kind of you're buying a widget lowest price wins. That's kind of the evaluation criteria. So we don't have a lot of latitude in this case to stray from the lowest bid. So-
Okay, no, questions called? Questions called? Okay, all those in favor? Okay,
In favor, Mayor Brown?
okay, all those against? Okay, 6-2. Oh, we missed, oh, no, Councillor Brown is in, okay. Did you give me the resolution?
My only point there, Mayor, we need to start adding that stuff to these resolutions so that we can.
Just turn on your mic there. Can you give me the resolution? Did you read it?
I think to what Dan was speaking to, it may help us address some of these concerns if we have a better understanding on the reports of the criteria that has gone through the tendering process versus RFP. We clearly know the RFP process is more rigorous than a tender. Tender might be slightly different. And I think in some cases, it almost appears as if different areas of within the city, the process is a bit different. And, you know, we're not always saying the same thing every time we come here. 1 minute it's this, you go to water and sewer, it's a different process. So it is becoming very confusing. And all we're going on is the information that's in front of us right here. So this information, the way it was presented, it probably drove a lot more conversation here than needed to. Had we just said it met all this, this, and this, lowest bid, that's all the tender required, we'd be done. But it doesn't. It draws more questions and concerns around the process and doubt. So I think that's what's leading to what Councillor Duran is saying is they won the tender, they did this, let's put that all on there and we're done the conversation. So something to think about, please.
Yep. Councillor, okay, change order, Royalty Junction Road.
Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Be it resolved that the change order for Royalty Junction Road be approved and that the transfer of funds to roads, street resurfacing from stormwater management in the amount of $223,187.40 plus all applicable taxes be accepted, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yep, Councillor Twill, Councillor McKinnon, and Councillor Duran. Go ahead there.
The question I have is, the company that won the original tender now, due to staff's deliberations with respect to Royalty Junction Road and the required infrastructure in order to reconstruct that road so that there will be longevity. We're talking approximately 200, I think it was 240,000.
It's in the resolution.
I know I don't have the resolution in front of me. So because there's an additional cost, does this have to go back out to tender? Because, you know, it's quite a bit of money. I just wanted to see if we're following the proper tendering process, the tendering policy.
As you heard in committee, Councillor Twill, because we did ask this question and we wanted to make sure it was explained to us that because this tendering was already done, and this was an area where we've already awarded a tender, and it would be considered an extension of, in the same area for the work that's going to be done. They came in at a fairly, what they considered an acceptable price for the work that had to be done. And the fear was that they explained to us that it is okay within the way the current tender went. If we were to go to tender again on this particular project, it was explained to us at that point that this would be a much more expensive project to complete. And I believe that this work is it's almost an emergency situation that this road needed to be fixed. But Scott, if you could confirm if I'm correct?
Worship
Chief Engineer.
Twill, so the biggest concern is the timing wise, really, truly. We need to do, so some of this work was already planned for, but after the winter and after further investigation on the road itself, we felt we had to augment what we were already planning to do. And this work needs to be done at the same time as the other work. So the work that was already to be done was to be pulverizing the road and adding some additional material to build up the road bed. Well, this is adding more material to build up that road bed to give us more structure under the road before we put the asphalt. Along with that is additional stormwater work. If we don't do the stormwater management, we risk eroding away more shoulders and risk damaging the future road bed. So it's all related and linked, and that's why we recommend to approve this change order through this process. It's been done before because it's all associated with what has been originally tendered. If we were to say, okay, we wanted to cut this project from this contract and retender this entire work, it is likely that it could come in higher. We don't know that, but there is some anticipation that that could happen. And the other thing is, timing-wise, I'm not sure we can get it out the door and get it awarded in time and complete it this year. Just resources and time and the tendering process and how long that takes could take some time and push us late in the fall before we could get it all done. So that's why we're recommending to get this work done right away. The contractor, I believe, was set to start as early as tomorrow on this road because there is a lot of work to be done and it's going to take them some time to do it.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's very exciting to see this road actually going to be fixed up. It is a mess, the shoulders. Just a question on the report that was issued. I know, Mr. Adams, we spoke. There's a couple of spring holes on the hill going down on the west end of this road. I just don't see it in the report that that's going to be repaired. You had mentioned that putting some drainage sub-base or tiles or something in there. I just don't see it in the report of work to be done.
Councillor McCabe said already he directs that. Go ahead.
Your Worship,
Chief
through
Engineer.
Councillor McKinnon. So a lot of those will be already addressed. As for the spring holes, a lot of them, we don't believe it's actual springs. We think it's a lot to do with the stormwater management along the roads, keeping the water in the ditches. The whole road's going to be pulverized, and then we're going to build up that bed and strengthen it. We believe that is with this. Recently, we haven't seen any more spring issues that we've seen coming out of the road. So we believe it is more of a seasonal thing when there's a lot of water that's just kind of pooling on the side of the roads. So with this, we expect that all that should be corrected, and we anticipate no further issues once all this work is completed.
Councillor Twill, second question.
Question to the manager. In your report, your original report, you talked about a comprehensive approach as a result of further meetings. In terms of the reconstruction of the road, Scott, is there anything that's being negated or not included in this major reconstruction of Royalty Junction Road, which is in, I would say, dangerous shape? You talked about stormwater management. I understand that originally the base was going to be 4 inches. It's now going to be 6 inches. Is there anything that's missing that's not included in this major reconstruction of this extremely busy road?
Councillor McCabe, is it all right to the Chief Engineer? Green light.
Your Worship, through the Council Tweel. So we've had a number of individuals look at that on our team. Everyone's fairly confident that this is it's pretty extensive work. Again, all the ditches are being dug out, reshaped, culverts being replaced. We're increasing the capacity of the culvert underneath the road at the gully down there because there's a bit of a stream down there. We're doubling that capacity down there, so that will help us drain the water out even quicker. And then again, strengthening the road bed further and asphalt base and seal and fixing all the shoulders. There's not much more we could do to that road. It's going to be a really nice road to drive at the end of the day.
Councillor Drawn? No.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. The only thing is, I understand we went out to tender. There was a certain document that went out, and this company won it. That's fine. But you talk, Scott, that it could be more expensive. if this was such a bigger undertaking as it needs it, I understand it needs it. I drove on it this weekend, and it is. I didn't even know that it was ours because it was in such bad shape. So that brings me back to the notice of motion that I gave almost 2 months ago to say, when the storm or the ice or the drainage in the spring does things to roads, would this have been something that we should have caught earlier? It's just how much more that we went out to tender are we putting in? Is this the 256,000 more than the cost? Am I correct in saying that?
Councillor McCabe, is it all right that he directs that? Is there additional cost there, Scott? That's what he's asking. Is this additional upon, 500,000 for the original?
Your worship, through the counselor. So I don't have the original for the full value of that particular section because our full tender is, the full quantity of asphalt for the whole package. So I don't know the specifics for this particular roadway. But the additional $250,000 in this resolution, or 223,000, is just the additional work that we anticipate needing for this road to ensure the longevity of it.
Yeah. Yeah, Councillor Duran, it's part of resurface and package B, so you can't really break it down. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge amount. I mean, should we not be going out to tender on that again? Like, this is not 10,000. That's a very large amount, right? I just, I know it needs work. I know everything. I just, you get caught in these policies or, the tendering, and then it changes. This is a huge amount of extra work. And I just don't feel comfortable, but I know the work has to be done. So that's why I'm struggling with it. But thank you for your explanation, Scott.
CAO, Eleanor, the BDO report, it referred to, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, that this paving tender that was decided by committee and didn't come back to council, this is coming back to council. That was what was recommended by BDO.
Your worship, that is correct. My understanding from BDO, it was, I think, 2018, there was additional paving that was carried out, but the additional change order amount did not come to council for approval. So that's why we're here getting approval for the additional amount to be spent.
Question called? Okay. Councillor Twill, you've already spoken twice, sorry. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just what we're hearing tonight, this is just another reason why it's so important for us to get this procurement bylaw done, because we've got lots of inconsistencies going on. So thank you.
Questions called? All those in favor? Councillor Drawn?
Not in favor, thank you.
8-1? Yeah. Okay, now Parks and Recreation, correct? Do you wish to read that right away there, Matt? No, go ahead.
Moved by Councillor Twill, seconded by Councillor Matart. Be it resolved that as per the recently advertised tender for Victoria Park, City Diamond Overflow Parking, Drainage and Improvements, the City of Charlottetown accepts the bid of $43,350 plus all applicable taxes from J.E. Matheson Construction Incorporated, and that the amount of $18,000 plus applicable taxes from CBCL Limited for engineering, project management, and professional services be accepted. And further, that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Okay, questions called? All those in favor?
Just 1 second. Now, as I read it more, I guess I'm in conflict to this as well, so I can't vote on it. Sorry about that.
Pertaining to what?
My son-in-law's company bid on it, so I didn't know that. I don't know what he does, but then it's in the
But they're
one
not
of the
low
bidders
bid.
on this.
They're not low bid.
Yeah, but I can't be involved on it.
Okay.
He's right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good, good. Just go out the room and close the door.
Thank you for that.
Okay. All those in favor? Did you want to look at the resolution there?
Oh, I'm good.
So that's 8-0. 8-0. Okay. Next one, CO.
Moved by Councillor Twill, seconded by Councillor Bernard. Be it resolved that as per the recently advertised tender for Victoria Park Maintenance Building renovations, the City of Charlottetown accepts the bid of $63,757.11, plus all applicable taxes from B&S Construction, and that the amount of $15,000 plus all applicable taxes from 9 Yards Architecture Limited for professional services and project management be accepted. And further, that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution. Now, I know Councillor Bernard's not here, so
Oh, so we need someone else.
we need someone different.
Councillor Matard, he sits on the committee. Well, just let him sign it. Jeez.
I don't have a...
Screw. Any more gum? Hold on. Okay. Question's been called by Councillor McCabe. All those in favor?
In favor?
Okay, 9-0. Okay. Do we have another one? That's it for parks. I'm just going back to my agenda. So now we go into planning, and do you want to read the first one?
Thank you. Your
CEO?
Worship.
Do you wish to speak first? Go ahead.
Maybe. There's one of our resolutions, and maybe I wait till we get to it, but I'm not comfortable with us going forward with it this evening. I was looking for a deferral back to committee and staff, but maybe I wait till resolution number 4 comes.
Yeah, and we could have dealt with that with approval agenda, but you know what? If you want to take it off, is that what you want to do? You will.
I do, because the planning board had some lengthy discussion on it, and the wording of the resolution is not, and the detail in the resolution is not there in terms of the development agreement. So
And which one is that?
that's resolution number 4, Ralden Avenue.
Okay, so we'll wait till that, and then you can defer it.
Yes, please, back
Okay.
to committee.
Major variance 62. Yeah, she's going to wait. Okay, major variance 62 Sherwood Road.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Be it resolved that council defer any decision at the present time concerning the request for major variance for the subject property located at 62 Sherwood Road, PID 455642, to increase the maximum allowable building height from 15 meters, 49.2 feet, to approximately 18.17 meters, 59.62 feet, to allow for a 75-unit, 5-story apartment building on the subject property pending the resolution of comments received from the City Public Works and Maritime Electric with respect to the application.
Okay, Councilor Matard, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. To the chair, I just have a question on this deferral. Why would it, if we want to come here to vote to defer, why did we put it on the agenda to have the discussion to start with? Why wouldn't it have just not been in the package to start with? So it seems a bit, okay. But, okay, thank you. I'll let you give a
Can you,
record answer to that.
No, just 1 second.
We had the exact same question in the planning board meeting, and I believe David's explanation was that he felt that it was already far enough down the rabbit hole that it should come here, but he's here online tonight and he can speak to that, but we had the exact same question. Why would a deferral come to tell us that we're deferring it when we're already deferring it? So procedurally, we were confused too, but David at the time did have an explanation, so I'm going to hand it over to him to share that explanation once again with council.
David, are you there?
Yes, Your Worship, I'm here on the line.
Go ahead.
Okay, Through the chair, to answer the question regarding why this is on the agenda, this is to basically give some formal direction back to staff about what we need to do with the application. We were already on our way bringing this to planning board when we had comments come in just a couple of days before the package was going out. So we were kind of like far enough along the line that this was on its way to planning board. We wanted to allow the applicants an opportunity that it could come through the process. By granting a deferral, we don't have to recirculate the application again and do a mailing again. So when it comes back, we've already done that. We've already done our public consultation piece with regard to major variants. So this brings it back to an operational level where we can work through these comments and these concerns that Maritime Electric and Public Works have raised regarding the application, and we can just deal with it on an operational level that way. There was no feedback from members of the public on this application. It was just what I would call agency and departmental comments that came through. So this is really just to formalize the deferral so that we can focus on those areas of concern, and we have that direction from council to do that.
Thank you, David. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Your Worship. To the chair, I received a phone call this afternoon, and they're curious what the planning board, what issues that Public Works and Maritime Electric have in respect to building this building in the location. So can I just get what the reasons are, and so I can pass them along?
Sure. So Maritime Electric has a major electrical tower that's been proposed in that area. So they just want to make sure that from a distance and safety perspective, that it's not going to affect the long-term planning that Maritime Electric already had for a piece of property that's been allocated for that. And David, if I've missed something, you can add to that.
Yeah, it's the Malpec substation
Yeah,
too.
the
It's a
Malpec,
major,
that's-
yeah.
I just didn't have the technical term correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, Your Worship, there's two things at play here. So from Maritime Electric, they have concerns with respect to what the Planning Board Chair, Deputy Mayor Yankoff stated, but also in addition to that, they have existing drainage issues that are occurring at their substation, erosion issues from stormwater drainage, and they want to seek resolution of those, or at least to have them addressed. And they had fears that this development might exacerbate or intensify those existing impacts that are occurring to their substation. Apparently, there's been repairs that they've had to make to reinforce the integrity of the grounds on a portion of that site. And for Public Works, there's an intent for a new access from Sherwood Road to link into Mina Jane Drive to the south, and the applicants on their application have only shown a limited access from Sherwood Road that would be only into the parcel itself and wouldn't connect with Mina Jane Drive to the south. So it was shown as a gravel access, not a paved public road on the site plan that were provided, and so Public Works had some concerns about that, that they wanted to seek further clarification with the applicants about how we could come to a point where this development could help spearhead or complete that road connection. So there's some outstanding access issues that Public Works wanted to seek resolution on, and it's for those reasons that we recommend deferral on the application at this point, and then we'd bring it back once those issues have been adequately addressed and resolved for each party, each commenting agency.
Councillor
Trio. Thank you. Just a follow-up question. I understand the rationale for the deferral. My question is, David, is there any way that you can accomplish both these things, pass a resolution with the conditions attached that those deficiencies that you outlined, can they not happen simultaneously so that once they are addressed and addressed effectively, the developer can go ahead with his development? Can we not do that and parallel one another?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Twill. if I hear you correctly, are you asking that we go ahead and pass the resolution this evening with the stipulation that these other items need to be dealt with operationally so that it doesn't have to come to council? Is that what I'm understanding that you're asking me?
Councillor Twill.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, that's, because that way staff know what they need to do from a Public Works and of course with Maritime Electric and address those deficiencies, as David has pointed out accurately. And then once staff feel comfortable and confident that they have been addressed, then they can sign off, as opposed to, coming back here. Why can't we achieve both objectives at the same time? That's all I'm suggesting.
Okay, thank you for that. Although it seems like the common sense approach to take that approach, but I believe procedurally we're not able to do that. And that's just a procedural thing. Now, David, if you want to fancy it up with another explanation, you feel free to add to that.
Yeah, through the chair, your worship, an alternative here that council could consider, the motion on the floor is the deferral, as put forward. An alternative to that motion would be, and I think Councillor Tweel is kind of alluding to this, an alternative motion would be to approve the variance as applied for, and these issues that regard Maritime Electric's concerns regarding stormwater drainage and erosion concerns, and then Public Works concerns regarding access and future road connections. Conceivably, those issues could be punted to a future building permit, and they could be conditioned a building permit. So in essence, the variance could be granted tonight, but
Friendly amendment? No, let him finish.
the height variance that's been requested for this apartment building could conceivably be approved tonight. And then operationally, these issues could be dealt with ahead of any building permit. So the city would basically not issue a building permit until these are resolved. So the development, council could give essentially permission for the increased height. However, there's still a building permit yet to come, and there's always conditions to building permits. And there could be these matters that are, if they're still outstanding, like. We would hold off on issuing a building permit until they're dealt with and or they're authored as conditions to that future building permit. So that is an alternative route here, and that kind of agrees with Councillor Tweel's thought that if that were done tonight, if you approve the variance, that these matters would not have to come back to council and they would be purely operational in nature, instead of us trying to seek a resolution on them now and then bring a new resolution back later to approve it. So that's just an alternative approach that we could take here. And I'll turn it back to the chair. Yeah.
Sounds like efficiency and effectiveness.
So I will challenge that, David, because Planning Board did not effectively have their opportunity to deliberate and ask questions on this application because we began the meeting with accepting your deferral. So Planning Board never got an opportunity to discuss this application. So if you're telling me the Planning Board can be skipped for that process, then sure, efficiency and moving it on. But as long as you can comfortably tell me that Planning Board shouldn't have the opportunity to discuss this first, because that is the process. And anywho, I'll leave it in your hands to clarify.
Mr. Gundrum.
Yeah, through the chair, your worship, that is a good question that Deputy Mayor Yankoff raised. I will say that the application was already on an agenda for Planning Board. Planning Board, although the recommendation was to defer, I would say, notwithstanding that recommendation that was presented to Planning Board still was afforded an opportunity to discuss and deliberate on the application and the resolution. It's not unlike if a resolution to deny or approve an application came forward, there would be the alternative to do the inverse of that, right? So right now we're recommending deferral, but there is always alternative resolutions, which would be either to approve or deny the application as well. So those are always options that council has at their disposal. And I would just say that planning board was afforded an opportunity. However, the discussion may have been muted because of what our resolution, that our recommendation rather was to defer. So that might have muted, the encouragement for any discussion at that meeting, and I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Craig.
Yeah, I think I would speak for members of that committee, and Councillor McCabe was there as well too, but I didn't entertain any discussion because the motion was to defer. So I think we're getting back into our procedural quagmires here in some ways, where we're being tripped up. I think there's a collective, I would agree with Councillor Tweel. I think it was a good recommendation that in the interest of expediency and efficiency, that makes sense that the issues that have been identified by Maritime Electric and Public Works, if they can figure it out, who are we to, and they can come up with a resolution, who are we to get in the way of that and prohibit this development from going ahead? But I'm reluctant to speak for all the committee members, but I think if we go back to the planning board, they're probably going to say, I mean, you would have to assume that they're probably going to say, it makes sense to go ahead and just allow the professional people to work out whatever issues have to be rectified and then move forward with it. But are we bound by process on this situation in order to refer it back? And if we are bound by it, these are the sort of things we have to look at in terms of addressing our inefficiencies. Because one of the things we hear is that development takes so much time, and here we are holding up development again, really, probably unnecessarily. So, I don't know. I like moving things along. I like seeing if we can, but do we end up getting slapped in the hands because we didn't follow our due processes? So I feel like a little bit of a catch-22. Anyway, I don't know. I'm okay. I'm okay with moving it along and kind of going with what Councillor Tweel, but understanding that we have some issues around overstepping planning board. So I don't know. It's
CAO, do you have a hot mic there?
Thank you, Your Worship. So procedurally, there's no issue with changing a resolution. Like the report and a resolution already went to committee for consideration. Now it's come through to council. Just like earlier, you amended a resolution. You can always do that in a council meeting. The challenge is here at council, whenever it makes a decision on a planning item, the question that's being asked is this good planning? So in this particular question, you're being asked about a major variance to height. Public Works has talked about a change of access. And is that access connected to the height? You're going up, more people in the building, therefore greater access needed. I don't know. But if you go ahead and approve that without having a consideration of that access, that wouldn't be good planning. So then that begs to then be deferred, do your homework, bring it back and be confident in the decision that you're making. That it was good planning, you had all the information, you knew exactly what Maritime Electric was going to need and the solution for them. You knew if there was going to be a new access point and it would be included in the plan. That's the kind of information you need to know if it's good planning or not. So I sit here before you, I would still stand with staff's original recommendation to defer this to get the right information for you.
Councillor Ramsey.
My God, people, I mean, it's reading to defer this. Just like Councillor Drawlin said earlier about the RFPs and tenders and everything, we beat this to death. We're voting on a deferral here. And we're here, sitting here for another 15, 20 minutes over either saying, yes, we're going to vote for a deferral, or no, we're not. I mean, what are we doing? We're sitting here.
It.
Yeah, but over a deferral? Like, it's either a yes or no, Your Worship, is it not?
He's asking to move it along because he sees it more efficient and effective. Yeah, that's.
I don't know, I don't know.
That's all the part of discussion, debate. Okay. Yes, it's been. Question's been called. That's it. Councillor Twill has not said anything about the friendly amendment. Okay, go ahead. That's, I was waiting for that, but.
Well, you know, again, I'm not trying to take a shortcut here. I'm just saying we approve it. I'll make the amendment to approve it based on the prerequisites that our manager planning has illustrated in terms of correcting and addressing effectively the deficiencies with Maritime Electric and with the Public Works Department. Staff in the planning department are well positioned to making sure that all of those issues are effectively addressed, and when they are, I trust their judgment that they will sign off, and not until they've been addressed. So there's no need to come back here. As our manager pointed out, it was presented to committee. Committee had the opportunity to discuss it. Recommendation came here, and we do have the legal right to make an amendment to any resolution for that matter, and this is just a case in point. So I'll move the amendment.
Friendly amendment, seconded by who? Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. So the friendly amendment's on the floor to amend the deferral and allow the decision to go ahead. Yep. Just, yes, questions on the floor, but we have a deputy mayor.
Thank you. Just, folks, I just will remind you, as the chair of that committee, I will not support this because it's been explained again to us tonight, it's not good planning practice. We do not want to open up Pandora's box and not be operating under good planning practice. So I will say this goes back to our staff and our planning department, and we follow this process to the end correctly. Thank you.
Councillor Beck.
Thank you for that, Deputy. Deputy, can you outline, okay, so we move back, this gets deferred. What are the timelines around, the meetings that will take place between the developer, Public Works, and Maritime Electric? And secondly, when will this come back to Planning Board? Will that come back at we're July 23rd, we're meeting again when? Can you put some timelines around what that future, if this goes ahead, if this motion gets defeated, because we're dealing with the friendly amendment here, if this gets defeated and we go ahead with the deferral, what does that look like?
Deputy?
Yeah. So thank you for that. This is because the work has to be done operationally. David is going to have to answer that because I don't have staff schedule. But if staff is already in the process, then this can easily come to the next planning board meeting and on to the next council meeting. But I can't speak to staff's free time and ability, their vacation schedules, and anything else that's happening in the planning department right now. So David, perhaps you can speak to that?
Through the chair, your worship. Through the chair, your worship. It is an open-ended question. The next nearest planning board date is August the 6th. I don't know if that's realistic because some of the issues here are fairly major that Maritime Electric and Public Works have identified. And they, collectively, those two groups, agency and department, kind of hold the hammer here, so to speak. So it's really whether in discussions with the developer can come to terms with the concerns that Public Works has around access and future road network and these existing stormwater drainage and erosion issues that are affecting the Maritime Electric site. So they're not insignificant things, and it might take more than just one meeting cycle for them to get resolved. And I won't say anything further than that, but the next nearest meeting cycle would be the two August 6th and then August 13th for council would be the next round that we could target. But I don't have a lot of confidence we'd be able to make it there, given the scope of what's been identified here. But I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, friendly amendment's on the floor. All those in favor of the friendly amendment, raise your hand. Councillor Twill, Councillor McKinnon, okay. Those opposed? Okay. Well, I think, Councillor Drawn, yea or nay?
Nay for this one.
Yeah. Okay, those against? Councillor Drawn, yea or nay? Well, no, I know, I just wanted to get it for the record. Okay, so
I
it's
said nay.
7-2. 7-2 to reject the friendly amendment. Let's go back to the original resolution. Council defer any decision in the present time concerning the request for a major variance. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Councillor Drawn. In favor of the
Favor.
deferral? Yeah. All those
In
against?
favor.
Okay. Councillors. Okay, can we go to the next one? Councillor.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Iankov, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Be it resolved that Council approve the request for a site-specific exemption in the heavy industrial M2 zone of the Zoning and Development Bylaw as it pertains to 94 Watts Avenue, PID 757484, to allow for the existing building, 350 square meters, on the subject property to be used as a commercial daycare center, and that the commercial daycare center be added as an additional permitted use for the zoning that applies to the subject property.
So the resolution was read. All, question called? Questions called. All those in favor? Councillor Drawn.
In favor.
0. Okay. Next one. Yep.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Be it resolved that Council approve the request for a site-specific exemption in the Park Cultural PC zone of the Zoning and Development Bylaw as it pertains to 145 Richmond Street, PID 340422, to allow for 1, signs that project a business name, image, or advertisement onto a building or any other surface from a source external to the sign on the subject property, and 2, to allow for animated video signs on the subject property.
Resolution read. Questions called? No. No. Councillor Twill. Thank you.
I want to
Go ahead there, sir.
just acknowledge and recognize the work that General Manager for the Confederation Center has put into this particular request. I think he's represented the logic and rationale very well. He's alluded to buildings across Canada and Ottawa in particular, and I think this will greatly enhance marketing ability and having the Confederation Center become much more known than it is now. So I think we have a good general manager there, and I just want to thank him.
CEO Steve Bellamy. Well done. Yes, thank you. I agree with that too. Question called. All those in favor? Councillor Drawn?
In favor.
Okay. We're moving. Okay. Is this Ralden Avenue?
We have 2 bylaws after this.
Yeah, but is this Ralden? 140?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, there was a question about Ralden Avenue. You wish to speak to it, Deputy Mayor, before you read it?
Yeah, I just, I'd like to send this back to, back as a deferral to get a little bit more detail in the resolution as we had discussed at Planning Board. I don't see that this resolution is reflective of the, of what the Planning Board had said was a recommendation. So I'm recommending that I'm asking that we take the resolution off and defer it back.
So it's asked to defer this resolution, moved by Deputy Mayor Yanka, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Councillor Petard.
Thank you, Your Worship, and appreciate the deferral, Councillor Yankoff, but you didn't necessarily explain what is missing from here for the rest of us for context. Could you do that, please, just so we're understanding what the deferral is missing?
Just 1 second. Okay. Deputy?
Sure. So the planning board discussed the development agreement, and there were 4 pillars of this development agreement, and they're not included in it. And I think it's important that they are. And those pillars, going by memory, are noise pollution, neighborhood disruption, pardon me? Parking, and what was the 4th one? Environmental, so aesthetics. So those have not been addressed in the resolution as planning board had asked. So I'm just a little hesitant to bring this in good faith to council without full transparency that this wasn't quite accurate as what the recommendation was from planning board.
Councillor Peck?
I would disagree. I think we had discussion at planning board about that, and basically it was left to work that stuff out, that the agreement was in principle to move on. I didn't support the motion in and of itself, but I think the committee, and it was, I think, 5-3, I think was the vote. So we did have a fair amount of debate on it, but it was left to figure out those particulars in terms of what would be an acceptable agreement to mitigate the concerns that were expressed by the residents in the area. The one thing I would add to this is I think we have to be careful about even entering into these sort of arrangements, because this whole property was existing as a legal non-conforming, and it had been operating in there for 30-some years. The change was being asked to come in and add an additional change to allow for an additional usage of the land. I think we have to be careful about that in terms of an area that is predominantly residential, that we go and start adding on potential existing usages where in the past these properties have been existing, and we would have them in various parts of the city where they've been legally non-conforming for a long time. And I think especially in this day and age where we have less than 1% vacancy rate, and we have potential uses that could be used otherwise for properties, I think this is one that we have to be careful about instead of possibly reverting back to its original usage, which is what it was originally zoned for. I think we should be careful about adding existing agreements. So I would not support the motion to defer this. I think what we should be doing is, I think we should be not entertaining that and deal with that motion, and I would not support deferral, and I certainly would not support the original motion as it stands.
Deputy.
I was just going to point out that the deferral's on the floor, and if that's not successful, then I think then we get into the debate about whether or not we're going to support the original resolution or not. So I'm just thinking that we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So I see the deferral on the table, so we need on the floor, so we need to decide yes or no to the deferral. So we should be speaking to the deferral, not to the original resolution.
No, I think he's speaking to both. He's speaking to both, deferral and the resolution. Okay, Councillor Twill.
I think what's interesting to note here is that the councillor for the ward second the deferral. So usually in these particular cases, I think you should take into effect that the councillor for the ward would like a deferral. 9 times out of 10, doesn't happen all the time. Usually we respect the elected official that represents that constituency. Yeah, just pay me back for a change. Anyway,
those shows of affection should be more often.
In all fairness, because she has seconded the motion for a deferral, we owe her that respect. Thank you.
Questions called? On the deferral. All those in favor of the deferral, please raise your hand. Okay, Counselor Drawn, yea or nay?
In favor?
All those against? 8-1. So, CAO Eleanor, can you just write, can you give me that so I can put right deferral on it? Yeah, yeah. Momentarily, it flows, it ebbs and flows. Let's see what happens tomorrow. 8-1. Okay. Okay. Do you have a second reading to amend the building code bylaw? Could you please read it? CAO Eleanor, please ignore that, just go ahead.
City of Charlottetown Building Code Amendment Bylaw, bylaw number PH-BC.3.1, amend the City of Charlottetown Building Code Bylaw to align terminologies with the recently enacted National Buildings Code. The bylaw was read a first time on July 9th, 2024. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Charlottetown Building Code Bylaw number PH-BC-3 be read a second time, and that said bylaw now be approved and adopted. Moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McCabe.
Shall I carry? Councillor Drawn?
Carry?
Councillor Drawn?
Yes,
hear me?
carry.
Yes. You're in conflict, you'll leave the room again?
That's right. Well, I'm signing off there. This is the last one, right?
You don't want to stay around for new business?
No, there's one more. One more bylaw.
Oh,
Is there another one after
There's
this?
one more here.
Yeah. No, that's the last one.
Okay, I'll just leave the room in this one then.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, okay.
Can you read it? Is it much or much? M-U-T-C-H. It's like in Ontario, that'd be M-U-C-H.
City of Charlottetown Amendment, Zoning and Development Bylaw, PH-ZD.2, to adopt Bylaw PH-ZD.2-083, a bylaw to amend the Zoning and Development Bylaw to amend Appendix G zoning map of the Zoning and Development Bylaw from single detached residential, small R-1S to single detached residential narrow R-1N on the extension of Much Crescent, PID 773051 or 051. Read a first time, July 9th, 2024. Whereas the bylaw to amend the City of Charlottetown Zoning and Development Bylaw, PH-ZD.2-083, as it pertains to the extension of Much Crescent, PID 773051, as attached, was already read. Be it resolved, the said bylaw be read a second time and approved. Moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McCabe.
Shall I carry?
Okay. Be it resolved that said bylaw be adopted. Moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McCabe.
Shall it carry? Pass. 8-0. Okay. Thank you very much for this evening. Appreciate your time and efforts. And Monday, there's a special meeting at noon hour. You can make it on T3. Trans 3. One other item. There could be another item for planning, but won't take long. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Drawn, you gone?
No, I'm back. Thank you. Bye.
I heard the